How far would you go to save your ultimate story crush from a doomed plot ending? Far enough to break into the very book you were reading and fund his entire military rebellion on a billionaire budget. Deep inside a snowbound log cabin tucked away in frozen mountain woods, a desperate band of freedom fighters sits huddled around a war room table plotting their next move. Sitting right at the head of that wooden table is Prince Atius himself, staring down with eyes colder than the winter storm brewing outside. Honestly, look at that broody protagonist glare. The man is practically drowning in dramatic stoic aura. Prince Atius rests his chin thoughtfully on his fist, asking his trusted inner circle exactly how much money they'll need to bribe the household staff over at Count Rustler's estate. His bespectacled strategist adjusts his glasses, calculating that infiltrating Count Rustler's residence to secure the late emperor's hidden letter will cost a whopping 5,000 den. Right on cue, the other rebel captains throw their hands up in pure panic, whining that their emergency reserves ran completely dry long ago. With zero cash in the bank and a high-stakes espionage mission on the line, the whole room dissolves into anxious chatter while Atius stays dead silent, interlacing his fingers in deep thought. Host check. Is it even a proper fantasy revolution if the freedom fighters aren't completely broke within the first 5 minutes? Classic tropes never fail. Just as Atius is about to speak up, the heavy wooden cabin door suddenly swings open. An out-of-breath scout bursts inside clutching a giant, heavy burlap sack and yells out in total bewilderment for His Highness to look at what was left right on their doorstep. The breathless scout heaves the mysterious sack onto the center table, catching everyone's attention as dust settles. The scout unties the rope and dumps the bag, causing thousands of glittering golden coins to pour out across the table right alongside a sealed white envelope. The aides completely lose their minds, gawk-eyed and gaping at the fortune as they count up over 50,000 den on the spot. The red-haired ally cautiously picks up the crisp white envelope and hands it over to Prince Atius, asking if his lord wishes to read the note left inside the fortune bag. Atius breaks the red wax seal and unfolds the letter while his entire council leans in with wide eyes, wondering who on earth could have dropped a fortune on their front lawn out of nowhere. The camera reveals the letter's contents, written in bright, sparkly pink cursive that reads, "Please move to a warm place. This is the leftover money after settling the books." Signed, your anonymous sponsor, complete with a super silly doodle of a goofy little bunny sticking its tongue out. Seriously, imagine fighting a dangerous imperial civil war and getting financed by someone using chibi bunny stationery. The contrast is absolutely hilarious. Atius and his two top commanders stare at the adorable bunny doodle in absolute dumbfounded silence, totally frozen as the aides explode into a frenzy trying to guess who this mysterious benefactor could possibly be. The red-haired aide literally starts weeping waterfalls of joyful tears, hands clasped in prayer as he declares that God must have sent an angel from heaven to secure His Highness's throne. Behind him, another guy gets surrounded by emotional, fiery aura, roaring that once their revolution succeeds, they must repay this angel at all costs. Atius gently presses the note against his chest, his gaze softening as he orders his men to pack their gear so they can finally leave the freezing cabin and spend the winter somewhere warm. Walking over to the frosty window frame, Atius peers out into the heavy snowstorm blowing through the pine trees. Staring at the white horizon, he mutters under his breath, wondering if this unbelievable act of kindness came from that same mysterious sponsor once again. Cut to the snow-covered forest outside, where a secretive figure wrapped in a thick purple winter cloak is quietly treading away from the cabin hidden among the trees. The cloaked traveler walks briskly through the deep drifts, carefully making sure no one from the rebel camp followed her into the woods. Pulling back her fur-lined hood, the mysterious sponsor turns around to reveal a drop-dead gorgeous young woman with vibrant pink hair and glowing purple eyes. Blowing a warm breath into the freezing air, she smiles softly, relieved that her latest emergency cash delivery was enough to keep her favorite boy warm today. Flashback to the history of the original story. In the year Crown Prince Atius turned 5, the reigning emperor of the Oswell Empire passed away, leaving the young prince as the rightful heir to the Golden Throne. But before little Atius could take his place, his ruthless half-uncle staged a brutal coup, pushing the young prince aside and usurping the imperial crown through bloodshed. For years, Atius hid his sharp claws, quietly enduring endless hardship while secretly building a massive rebel movement until he finally reclaimed his rightfully owned throne. Host take, now that sounds like an absolute masterpiece of an edgy revenge plot, except for what the author pulled next. Because right after winning the throne, Atius dies from the lingering physical trauma and poisons of his past suffering, bringing the novel The Star of Revolution to a tragically absurd ending. Magnificent portrait panels showing the tragic protagonist holding his holy blue sword, forever remembered as a fallen hero whose life was nothing but continuous pain. Cut to the modern world where an overworked office worker is curled up under her blanket at midnight, crying her eyes out over a phone screen and screaming at the author to bring her beloved prince back to life. Turns out, while going through severe workplace harassment at her toxic office job, reading Atias's journey was the only thing that kept her sane through all the daily stress. Huddling inside a cramped bathroom stall at work while wiping away her tears, seeing Aisha's bravely overcome impossible odds gave her the emotional strength to keep pushing forward. Back in her room, she snaps, sitting bolt upright on her mattress in pure indignation as she decides she cannot let this terrible ending slide. She aggressively smashes her fingers against the touchscreen, typing out a savage wall of text slamming the author for putting Atias through hell just to kill him off the second he becomes emperor. Close up on her thumb, hitting the send button to post her fiery review on the web novel comment section. Exhausted from crying and ranting, she collapses back onto her pillow and pulls her blanket tight over her shoulders. Closing her eyes, she clutches her chest in the dark room, feeling a deep pang of sorrow for how much her favorite character suffered without ever getting a second of true happiness. She squeezes her hand into a tight fist against the sheets, whispering to herself that if she were the author, she would have done everything in her power to make Atias truly happy. Suddenly, the scene shifts to a breathtakingly lavish fantasy estate under a clear blue sky. Down in the gardens, two maids walk by carrying linens while whispering that their young lady hasn't left her bed all morning. The maids murmur anxiously to each other, worried that their mistress really needs to step outside today before the Duke finds out. Inside a sprawling bedroom fit for royalty, a girl in a frilly silk nightgown stands frozen in front of a giant gilded mirror, gasping out in shock at the reflection staring back at her. Surrounded by floating rose petals and magical sparkles, she sees a stunning noblewoman with flowing pink hair and violet eyes staring right back. Host comment, "Yep, congratulations, girl. You just unlocked the classic Isekai starter pack, waking up in a mansion with zero warning." A grand decorative title card appears announcing her newly inherited identity, the Poison Rose of Elamore. A dramatic, dark frame portrait depicting a mysterious lady hiding her face behind a fan, surrounded by thorny crimson roses and toxic berries. The universe drops a full character bio. She is now the sole daughter of the mighty Elamore Duchy, blessed with unmatched wealth and beauty, but infamous throughout the empire for her wicked, arrogant cruelty, including pouring hot tea straight over a poor blonde noble girl's head. Close-up of the notorious Catherine Elamore fanning herself with a snicker, carelessly saying her hand slipped after ruining another noble's dress. Cut to chibi Catherine clutching her head in absolute mental meltdown, realizing she didn't just transmigrate, she possessed the main Villainess. Screaming at the top of her lungs, Catherine yanks her pink hair in pure horror, realizing she is now the exact wicked noblewoman that her beloved Prince Atias absolutely despises with a burning passion. Right in the middle of her breakdown, a glowing holographic system window suddenly materializes in midair right in front of her nose. Catherine blinks through her tears as she reads the glowing red text. For our reader who deeply loved the Star of Revolution and its protagonist, Aetius, we have prepared a special possession event. Do you like it? The system window updates with a cheerful follow-up message explaining that instead of just reading text on a screen, she now gets to experience the world firsthand and actively support her favorite character. Then comes the catch. The system displays two mandatory conditions to return to her original world. First, Aetius' revolution must succeed. Second, after taking the throne, Aetius must survive for at least 3 full years. Catherine swallows hard, realization washing over her that she actually has a direct chance to save her favorite boy from his tragic death. Just then, another system prompt pops up promising a special starter gift to help her on her quest. Catherine turns toward her wooden bedside table where a glowing red magic box materializes with a soft snap. Unboxing her starter reward, her eyes light up as she realizes this is the key to secretly funding Atias' entire rebellion behind the scenes. Catherine peers into her bedside table where her starter reward sparkles inside a luxurious velvet box. Expecting an overpowered divine weapon, her mouth drops when she sees a delicate silver bracelet. She panics, wondering how on earth a fancy piece of jewelry is supposed to help her save Atias from a brutal death. Suddenly, a bright holographic prompt commands her to put the bracelet on. The moment she fastens it around her wrist, magical light circles her arm, projecting a floating dashboard that displays the Revolutionary Army's real-time stats. Their military military power and supplies are sitting at a pitiful low, with a livability score of just 17% and barely 10 cents in their funds. Catherine stares at the glowing magical rings swirling around her arm in absolute bewilderment, watching the live tactical data hover right in front of her face. For a second, her inner fangirl takes over and she sparkles with joy, striking a cute pose while giggling that she feels just like a real magical girl. Host take, girl, you are supposed to be funding a bloody revolution, not auditioning for a magical girl anime. But the system instantly ruins her mood, dropping a casual side note warning that if she fails to meet any of the survival conditions, she will literally drop dead on the spot. Catherine completely freezes, her tiny chibi face going totally blank as her brain tries to process that terrifyingly casual death threat. A heavy, horrifying realization washes over her as she stammers to herself, realizing that one wrong move means direct execution. To make matters worse, another prompt pops up with a friendly warning that she better not get caught secretly sponsoring the rebels if she ever wants to return to reality in one piece. Catherine gasps out in sheer outrage, completely floored by how insane this whole setup is. The system finishes off with a smug little wish of good luck and a silly emoticon before fading away. Catherine loses her mind entirely, screaming at the air and demanding answers from the author for tossing her into this impossible death game. Recapping her chaotic nightmare, she clutches her head in frustration, replaying how she got thrust into a house in mourning right as her favorite prince's rebellion is literally on the verge of total collapse. Talk about starting a game on ultra hard mode. Her stress levels must be through the roof. The dark floating warning panel glares back at her, heavily emphasizing that a single mistake will trigger an immediate death notice for her new identity. Catherine wraps her arms around herself, trembling in fear from the sheer weight of her situation. Yet, despite the terrifying stakes, her determination blazes as she vows to survive and protect her beloved Adius no matter what it takes. Fast-forwarding to her stealth cash drop-off, a system window flashes with joy, showing that leaving those 50,000 gold coins boosted the rebel army's livability rating straight up from 34 to 39%. Cut to the present moment, where Catherine is riding inside a grand green noble carriage pulled by two horses through a scenic winter landscape. She smiles softly to herself, relieved that because the original story is still in its early stages, she still has plenty of time to alter fate. Checking her status bracelet once more, the holographic display pops up with a quick slash effect, listing the updated stats of Atius's army. Looking stunning in her white fur cloak and elegant gown, Catherine glows with pride, seeing that her massive donation catapulted their overall revolution progress from 26% all the way up to 51% feels like a monumental triumph. She rests her chin on her hand with a sly smirk, knowing that 50,000 den will easily put out the immediate financial fires at the rebel camp. But right as she's gloating over her tactical genius, a polite voice interrupts her thoughts from across the carriage. The camera reveals her insanely handsome brown-haired butler, Heroes, sitting across from her in a crisp tailored suit and white gloves. Host comment? Whoa, check out the artist's character design here. Even the sidekick butler looks like a main lead. Catherine flips her pink hair back with a touch of noble arrogance, coldly asking if she's really required to report every little detail to him. In her head, she grumbles that she only brought him along because he refused to let her leave the estate unattended. Heroes instantly lowers his head, blushing furiously in sheer panic as he stammers out that he didn't mean to overstep at all. Seeing him get so flustered makes Catherine feel a slight pang of guilt for being so harsh. But she reminds herself that she has no choice. If anyone finds out she's secretly bankrolling the Imperial rebels, it will mean instant ruin for everyone involved. The atmosphere inside the carriage heavy shifts into dark suspense as Catherine reflects on the political landmines surrounding her. Dramatic visual reveals the current usurper emperor wearing his golden crown and blood-red velvet mantle from behind. The emperor and his loyal faction of ruthless nobles are constantly keeping a hawkish eye on Prince Atheus, desperate to eliminate the former ruler's true heir. And right at the very center of the tyrant emperor's loyalist faction stands none other than the powerful Elamore Duchy, the exact corrupt family she now leads. Talk about the ultimate conflict of interest. Imagine being the heiress of the main villain family while secretly acting as the head sugar mommy for the rebel prince. Leaning against the glass window frame, Catherine gazes out thoughtfully, realizing that if she drops even a single clue, the paranoid emperor will dig into her background immediately and place Adius under even tighter surveillance. Clearing her throat, she quickly shifts the topic back to business, asking Heroes about the status of her father's private treasure collection. Heroes flips open his leather ledger, reporting smoothly that all 78 luxury items were successfully liquidated, bringing in a staggering total of 3.1 million den. As their carriage rolls up to the massive Whitestone estate, Catherine nods in approval, murmuring that $3.1 million is a pretty solid turnout. In her mind, her jaw drops. That is an astronomical sum of money that she could have never dreamed of earning in her past life as a miserable office worker. A glorious panel showcases a massive treasure chest overflowing with sparkling gold coins and precious jewels. While sponsoring a full-scale revolution is wildly expensive, she still has a master plan for the leftover cash. Heros offers a polite smile, asking if his lady would like to reinvest all of these fresh profits into the Montella mine like they did previously. Catherine smiles with sharp confidence, ordering him to purchase the silver mine right behind their previous investment instead. Text overlay reveals her secret endgame because once Atias's revolution succeeds, she plans to seek political asylum abroad and live like a queen. A terrifying dark flashback panel shows a blood-red sky filled with cawing crows hovering over a wooden guillotine. In the original novel, once Atias reclaims the Golden Throne, he mercilessly purges every single noble who supported the usurper, including the entire Elmore household. The camera pans behind Catherine as she gazes up at the ominous execution platform, the grim shadow of her predetermined death looming heavily over her mind. Hilariously tragic cartoon visual shows chibi Catherine in prisoner rags and heavy iron chains, crying out in absolute terror that she refuses to end up on the chopping block. Host comment. Her mental drama is legendary. She went from confident mastermind to panicking prisoner in 0.2 seconds. The view zooms out to reveal the grand, sprawling Elmore Duchy estate where dozens of servants stand in crisp alignment. Catherine steel plates her resolve, knowing that while the Elmore name is marked for doom, whispers she will use her wealth to build a massive safety net before escaping the country. As the carriage comes to a halt, Heroes gently takes her hand, helping her step down onto the stone path. Catherine emerges looking like absolute royalty in a breathtaking crimson corset dress, her long pink hair cascading over her shoulders with regal grace. She walks gracefully down a long red carpet flanked on both sides by rows of uniformed maids bowing their heads in unison. As she passes, Catherine reflects on the dark secrets of the household. Every single servant working at Elmore is trapped in crushing debt to the duchy due to predatory interest rates, with Harrows being the sole exception. Unable to pay, they were forced into servitude to avoid being sold off as slaves. Close-up of a poor maid trembling uncontrollably under Catherine's gaze, dark shadow circles painted under her eyes from constant terror. To ensure complete obedience, the previous duke even kept a detailed hostage ledger containing dark leverage over every single employee. Feeling immense sympathy for their plight, Catherine recalls how she tried to approach them nicely when she first arrived, hoping to ease their suffering. In a funny flashback memory, Catherine smiles with pure sunshine, grabbing a maid's hands warmly and begging her not to be so afraid of her. But instead of being comforted, the poor maid completely faints from terror, her soul practically escaping her body as she begs for her life. Chibi Catherine staggers back in complete shock, watching ghosts fly out of the unconscious maid while utterly bewildered by what just happened. It was only afterward that Catherine realized a terrifying truth. The original villainess Catherine only used polite speech with her subordinates when she was about to completely ruin their lives. Host take, no wonder the poor maid thought she was getting executed on the spot. Talk about a massive communication error. Furthermore, whenever original Catherine's memories flooded back into her mind, she was horrified by just how irredeemably wicked the previous owner was. A furious flashback panel depicts the original villainess surrounded by fiery aura, screaming at her maid and viciously slapping her across the face just for breaking a few strands of hair while brushing. Chibi Catherine shivers in utter disgust, realizing she inherited the bad reputation of a total monster. Walking down the plush, red-carpeted hallway, Catherine watches her butler Harros walk ahead, keeping her eyes fixed on the surrounding splendor. She reflects on how every single servant in this mansion is bound to the Elmore Duchy by unbearable debt. Harros quietly opens the massive wooden door leading to her office, bowing his head respectfully as Catherine steps inside. She reminds herself that these servants are practically trapped, working like slaves under her family's predatory system. Yet, amidst the grim reality, Catherine harbors a hidden hope that once her secret plans take effect, whispering, everyone in the estate will finally be freed. Visualizing a brighter future, Catherine's face glows with a gentle, radiant smile. Imagining the sheer joy and relief on the servants' faces when she releases them from their generational debt. Look at that transformation! She went from worrying about getting executed to planning an entire corporate emancipation program. Talk about a wholesome villainess. Settling into her grand desk, Catherine reviews her investment documents with a satisfied smirk. A holographic system window confirms that her revolution progress is already at 51%. Leaning back in her plush leather chair, she chuckles softly to herself, confident that she'll secure political asylum abroad right before the rebellion peaks. But right as she's dreaming of her luxury retirement, Harros's polished shoes come to a halt right before her desk. Catherine's mind immediately wanders into a romantic fantasy visual, imagining Prince Atias triumphantly taking the imperial throne and full royal regalia, looking even more handsome than described in the novel. She clutches her documents to her chest, her cheeks flushing bright pink with drooling excitement as hard icons pop up around her head. Realizing Harros is standing right in front of her, Catherine snaps back to reality with wide eyes, quickly slapping her hand over her mouth to suppress her embarrassing grin. Clearing his throat, Harros lowers his gaze and reports that the temple finally sent back a formal response regarding her application to establish a public poorhouse. Harros probably thinks she's losing her mind, going from drooling superfan to intense duchess in 2 seconds flat. But his next words shatter her mood. Harros reveals that the high priest had personally rejected her application, prompting Catherine to yell out in shock. Sitting amidst her sprawling office, Catherine recalls that the high priest belongs to the same pro-emperor faction that her deceased father served. Looking out through the tall glass windows, she realizes that because the high priest used to compete with her father for the tyrant emperor's favor, he's now targeting her since she's left all alone. Chibi Catherine slams both fists onto the wooden desk, fuming that the corrupt priest is intentionally blocking her every move when she desperately needs that poorhouse as a front to send supplies to Atheus. Dark purple aura hums ominously around Catherine, causing Harros to sweat nervously as he senses his lady's terrifying rise in anger. Panicking slightly, Harros stammers out an apology, offering to head back to the temple to resubmit the paperwork. But Catherine crosses her arms coldly, snapping that going back would be an utter waste of time. Post note, wow, her villainous muscle memory kicked in hard there. She really needs to watch her temper before she gives Harros a heart attack. In her mind, Catherine winces in panic, realizing she accidentally slipped back into the original Villainess's harsh tone without even noticing. But when she looks up, Harros is standing bathed in a soft golden light, his cheeks tinted with a light blush as he nervously adjusts his crisp white gloves. Chibi Catherine blinks in complete confusion, her inner voice screaming as she wonders why on earth her stern butler is suddenly blushing up a storm. Harros brings his gloved hand to his mouth, gently asking if his lady could share her true motivation behind establishing the poorhouse. Her lack of greed is absolutely unheard of. Catherine narrows her eyes and crosses her arms, asking why he's prying into her motives. Internally, she panics, remembering that Harros used to be a completely obedient puppet who never dared question Catherine's orders. Harros explains smoothly that according to the duchy's strict financial rules, any massive expenditure requires a detailed recorded purpose, just like their previous investment in the Montella silver mine. Catherine nods reluctantly, realizing he's using valid protocol, but suspects he's just deeply suspicious of her sudden act of charity. I mean, can you blame him? If the local tyrant Villainess suddenly started funding orphanages, anyone would suspect a secret plot. Knowing she can't reveal her true motive, which is simply feeding her favorite prince warm meals, Catherine erupts into full villainous rage. She points her finger angrily at Harros, screaming at him to shut up and obey orders. As Harros bows his head in fear, Catherine's sweat drops internally, cringing at how ridiculously unhinged her outburst must seem. Shifting gears into mastermind mode, Catherine rests her chin on her hand, giving him a sly, seductive smirk as she murmurs that she can barely bring herself to admit her real goal. She pauses for dramatic effect, letting the intense silence hang over the dimly lit office. With an evil sparkle in her eyes, Catherine lies through her teeth, claiming she's establishing the poorhouse purely as a dirty front for money laundering and building an illegal slush fund. In her thoughts, she begs Harros to just buy her ridiculous villain lie so they can move on. A hilarious thought bubble reveals her true worry, a chibi image of Adius and his starved rebel officer shivering in a cold hut. Catherine knows if she doesn't get this supply line approved, her beloved prince will go hungry again. Harros nods in understanding, asking how she intends to convince the high priest to sign off on the permit. Right then, a spark of pure genius hits Catherine. That evil smirk on her face says it all. The high priest picked the absolute wrong day to mess with the girl who read the entire novel spoiler list. Looking up at her butler, Catherine commands him to fetch her fine stationery immediately. Twirling a dark feather quill between her fingers, Catherine wears a triumphant villainous grin, knowing that with her complete knowledge of the original book, blackmailing the corrupt high priest will be ridiculously easy. Meanwhile, the scene shifts far away from the duchy into a cold, dimly lit stone corridor, illuminated by flickering lanterns, the secret new stronghold of Prince Adius's revolutionary army. Deep inside the underground dungeon, a bound traitor dressed in fine clothes sits shivering in horror behind iron bars. Prince Adius steps out of the shadows, his dark blue hair falling over his piercing cold eyes as he stands before the cell like an unyielding judge. Gripping the cold iron bars, Aetius glares down at the traitor, asking in an icy voice who he sold the Revolutionary Army's secret roster to. Trembling uncontrollably on the stone floor, the traitor grovels desperately, begging the prince for mercy. Aetius's silver-haired strategist steps forward with a cold glare behind his glasses, reminding the prisoner that everyone already knows he traded his comrades' lives for gold to indulge in personal luxury. The strategist's voice drops to a lethal whisper, demanding to know the exact identity of the buyer while the traitor collapses onto his knees. The tension in this cell is unreal. You can literally feel the life leaving this guy's body under Aetius's glare. Sweating profusely, the traitor confesses that he handed the secret list over to Duke Elamor. The strategist winces internally, realizing that if the Duke hadn't died so suddenly, the entire revolution would have been wiped out on the spot. Coldly turning his back on the prisoner, Aetius ignores the traitor's desperate cries that he only did it because he was starving. Gripping the bars in complete hysteria, the traitor promises he'll never betray them again, begging for his life. But Aetius looks back over his shoulder with dead, unforgiving eyes, reminding him that he knows the absolute penalty for treason. Dark blue energy swaddles the corridor as Aetius speaks with chilling finality, stating that the man forgot he gorged himself on the blood money of his fallen brothers. With a single cold command, Aetius orders his men to execute the traitor on the spot, leaving the man frozen absolute terror. Walking away through the dark stone halls, Aetius remains completely unbothered, his ruthless nature fully on display. Suddenly, the scene shatters into reality as Catherine bolts upright in her plush bed, gasping for air with her hand outstretched. Clutching her forehead in confusion, Catherine sits among her silk sheets, trying to shake off a horrifyingly vivid memory that just resurfaced in her mind. Oh man, here comes another legendary villainous memory. Get ready for maximum secondhand embarrassment. A sudden flashback reveals original Catherine cornering a young Prince Aetius, striking a cute pose with hearts floating around her as she arrogantly asks if he wants to date her for scraps or remain a pathetic puppet prince for the rest of his life. Remembering the original Catherine's past, she clearly recalls Prince Aetius staring down at her with absolute disgust after her ridiculous proposal. Her cheeks burn with pure humiliation as her hands clench into tight fists, realizing just how cringe-inducing her previous self was. She squeezes her eyes shut in horror, wondering how original Catherine could possibly throw a massive tantrum simply because a prince rejected her. A hilarious flashback pops into her head showing chibi Catherine screaming uncontrollably at Aetius, demanding to know why he won't date her, while the prince stands there completely unbothered. Oh wow, talk about top-tier second-hand embarrassment. The original Villainess really had zero shame, didn't she? Waking up in her sunlit bedroom, Catherine rubs her aching forehead with a heavy groan and sigh, annoyed that she's the one forced to suffer through these embarrassing memories. Right on cue, a quiet knock echoes through the room as Harrows politely asks if he may enter. She calls out for him to come in, mentally complaining that Catherine's past reputation was so terrifying that not a single maid ever dares to enter her bedroom. Sitting up in her massive canopy bed, Catherine stretches her arms wide, telling herself to snap out of it because she has a mountain of work to handle. Stepping inside, Heroes offers a warm smile as he hands over a sealed letter, mentioning that someone sent it specifically for her. Staring down at the elegant wax seal, Catherine winces, realization belonging to yet another disaster left behind by original Catherine. Oh boy, here comes another parasite. Enter Philios Regalo, the leech fiancé arranged by her shady uncle Padelmon Elamor. In reality, both Philios and her uncle formed a secret alliance specifically to drain every last drop of Catherine's massive fortune. Looking at the situation objectively, Catherine realizes that if she hadn't transmigrated into this body, those two scheming fools would have stripped her of her entire inheritance. A funny chibi visual depicts Philios and Uncle Padelmon hovering over her like literal vultures, making Catherine grumble in frustration at how persistent this leech has been despite her excuses. Sensing her annoyance, Hiro steps forward thoughtfully, asking if he should tell the guest that his lady hasn't fully recovered her health yet. But Catherine glares at the letter with fierce determination, stating that avoiding trash only makes things messier and more annoying in the long run. Squeezing the envelope tight in her palm, Catherine coldly orders Heros to prepare her carriage for an outing immediately. Meanwhile, inside a lavish reception hall, Philios lounges lazily across a plush velvet sofa while surrounded by giggling noblewomen. Wow, look at this guy living it up on her dime. He's literally holding court with side chicks while waiting for his wealthy fiancé to drop by. The scene highlights the hypocritical letter Philios sent, claiming he couldn't sleep a wink out of sheer concern for Katrin after her parents' funeral. In his letter, he shamelessly invited her to his office, writing that he desperately wanted to comfort her and plan new business ventures together. He even added a subtle threat at the end, warning that if she dared reject him again, he would personally storm into her estate to see her. Hearing footsteps near the entrance, Philios turns around with a smooth, self-satisfied smirk on his face. The heavy double doors swing open as Catherine steps into the room, looking absolutely breathtaking in a regal, high-collared dark purple gown. Throwing his arms wide open, Philios greets her with fake enthusiasm while his two terrified female companions scramble off the couch in panic. As the two women sprint out of the room, Catherine exhales a slow, icy breath, remaining completely unbothered by their hasty exit. Look at his face! He actually thinks he can just wrap her around his finger with a cheap embrace, but Catherine's eyes are burning with pure hostility. Right as Philios leaning in to hug her, Catherine plants her hand firmly against his chest and violently shoves him backward. Stumbling back in complete confusion, Philios blinks in total shock, muttering her name as if he can't comprehend what just happened. Looking down on him, Catherine thinks to herself in disbelief, wondering how original Katrin could ever date such a pathetic scumbag after getting rejected by Atius. She glares down at him with cold pink eyes, her piercing gaze radiating pure contempt. Sweating slightly, Philios rubs the back of his neck and chuckles nervously, asking if she's just throws a fit because of the women who were sitting with him earlier. He flashed a condescending grin, cooing that her jealous side is actually quite cute, and gives him fresh artistic inspiration. Waving his hand dismissively, he arrogantly claims those women are only capable of admiring his poetry, insisting Katrin is his one true muse. Flashbacks flood Catherine's mind, revealing how Philios constantly got caught kissing other noblewomen under the moonlight, always feeding naive Katrin cheap excuses that she foolishly chose to believe. Original Katrin endured endless heartbreak from his infidelities, foolishly hoping a relationship would help suppress her tragic, unrequited feelings for Prince Adius. Wow, this guy has maximum audacity. He literally cheats on her, calls it artistic inspiration, and then immediately begs for a massive cash handout. Leaning forward smoothly, Philios shamelessly asks her to sponsor his new art business with a casual 100,000 dento, to which Catherine bluntly replies that she refuses. Crossing her arms tightly over her chest, Catherine stands tall and rigid, her stance echoing total defiance. Philios drops his jaw in pure shock, stammering in disbelief as Catherine internally declares there's zero reason to remain engaged to a leech. A hilarious chibi visual shows Catherine wearing a gas mask while blasting bug spray onto a tiny fly with Philios' face, deciding to conduct some serious pest control before leaving for the duchy. Stepping forward with a fake sweet smile, Philios reaches out for her hand, asking if she's just tired, only for Catherine to slap his hand away with a loud smack. Yes, tell him, queen! Throw the whole man into the trash bin where he belongs. Catherine looks down on him like an absolute empress, yelling at the top of her lungs that she is officially annulling their engagement right here and now. Her furious voice echoes loudly throughout the entire estate building, gasp sending Philios screaming her name in pure desperation. Striding briskly through the garden courtyard, Catherine ignores him completely until Philios sprints up and grabs her wrist, demanding to know what she means by an annulment. Regaining his smug composure, Philios smirks arrogance, claiming he knows she's only acting out because she's green with envy over the women from earlier. He waves his hand dismissively, condescendingly stating that only pathetic women get clingy over minor flirtations. Trying to guilt trip her into preserving her pride. Turning around with a fierce glare, Catherine steps directly into his personal space, snapping that she isn't big clingy at all. He's simply a useless, worthless parasite. Continuing her relentless beatdown, Catherine shouts at the top of her lungs that she simply can't stand looking at his ugly face for another second. Philios freezes in sheer disbelief, his jaw practically dropping to the floor. Stuttering pathetically, Philios tries to process what he just heard, asking in total shock if she truly just insulted his appearance. Wow, she really called him a literal dung fly right to his face. Talk about zero damage control. With a bright, angelic smile, Catherine cheerfully explains that her rose-colored glasses have officially shattered, declaring that compared to Prince Audius, Philios is nothing more than a buzzing dung fly. She dramatically rubs her temple with a heavy sigh, claiming that whenever an unappealing man gets too close to her, she suffers from severe nausea and dizziness. Hearing this, Philios turns beet red with absolute fury, screaming at the top of his lungs that he's actually extremely handsome, boasting that his own mother always called him the most handsome boy in the world. Catherine deadpans at his childish outburst, inwardly rolling her eyes as she notes that on top of being a leech, he's also a total mama's boy. Look at this trash getting physical. He actually thinks grabbing her is going to fix his broken engagement. In a fit of desperation, Philios lunges forward and forcefully grabs her by the shoulders, furiously roaring that he will never agree to an annulment over something so ridiculous. Covering her mouth with a nauseous expression, Catherine gags in disgust, complaining out loud that being touched by an ugly man is making her physically sick all over again. Smirking with absolute triumph, Catherine smugly reminds him that under imperial law, an annulment can be granted instantly without the partner's consent if it threatens one's physical well-being. Philios loses his mind in pure rage, raising his hand high in the air to strike her while shouting curses at her. Instinctively wincing, Catherine squeezes her eyes shut, horrified that this coward is actually quick to raise his hand against a woman. Boom! Hero entry incoming! Get wrecked, parasite! Before his hand can fall, a powerful grip snaps around Philios' wrist with crushing force. Opening her eyes in shock, Catherine gasps out loud as she looks up to find Prince Audius standing right beside her. With a freezing glare, Audius coldly demands to know what Philios thinks he's doing, while the pathetic noble stammers that they were merely having a minor lover's quarrel. Twisting Philios' arm further, Audius icily asks if violence is how he handles disagreements, completely ignoring the man's trembling claim that royal intervention isn't necessary. The camera focuses on Catherine's elegant purple shoes stepping gracefully backward, staying away from the chaotic fight. Audius stepping in under the guise of honor is top-tier chivalry, but we all know he just wanted to crush this guy. With a calm demeanor, Audius asserts that any honorable man would step in to defend a lady, while Catherine folds her arms with a satisfied smile. Without showing an ounce of mercy, Audius applies crushing pressure to his wrist, causing Philios to scream out in agonizing pain. A hilarious chibi depiction shows Audius casually flinging the whining noble through the air like a piece of garbage. Tumbling across the cobblestones, Philios scrambles to his feet and flees in terror, screaming over his shoulder that she will regret this, while Catherine scoffs at his sheer cowardice. Look at that intense eye contact. Sparks are flying even though they're both pretending to be totally unbothered. As silence falls over the garden courtyard, Catherine turns her attention toward her savior, her eyes widening slightly as she gazes up at him. Looking back at Audius, she admires his imposing presence, standing tall against the bright afternoon backdrop. For a brief, magical second, a soft smile plays on Audius' lips, leaving Catherine internally gushing over how stunning he looks. But as quickly as it appeared, his expression immediately hardens into a cold glare, stating dryly that Catherine hasn't changed a single bit. Hilarious chibi visual shows Catherine scratching her head in panic, wondering if his comment means he still thinks she has a foul, toxic mouth. Her internal fangirl is going wild right now. She's struggling so hard to stay in character. Standing just inches away, Audius looms over her, making Catherine's heart leap out of her chest as she internally screams about how dangerously close he is. Turning his head away, Atishus casually mentions that he didn't mean to pry into her personal affairs, causing Catherine's mind to explode into frantic chibi flails over his cuteness. Sweeping a stray lock of pink hair behind her ear, Catherine quickly gathers her composure to maintain her noble facade. Outwardly, she maintains a calm voice, telling him she knows he didn't mean any harm, praising how consistently righteous and noble he has always been. Inwardly, a dramatic chibi memory shows original Catherine sobbing hysterically, desperately wishing she didn't have to put on a mean villainess front around the prince. Hearing her unexpected praise, Audius' deep blue eyes twitch slightly in subtle shock, caught off guard by her surprisingly gentle tone. Wait, did she actually just offer a genuine polite apology? Audius' brain is probably crashing trying to process this. Bowing her head gracefully, Catherine soft-spokenly apologizes if her harsh words sounded rude rude, clarifying that she was only stating objective facts. Rushing past her with a quiet stride, Atius coldly excuses himself to attend to pressing royal matters, leaving Catherine screaming internally that she doesn't want him to leave yet. Standing alone in the picturesque estate courtyard, Catherine watches his tall silhouette walk away into the distance. A close-up highlights her expressive purple eyes, lingering on the memory of their brief encounter. The scene captures a stunning side profile of Prince Aetius, showcasing his sharp jawline and icy blue gaze as he walks away. Transitioning to the bustling city streets, Catherine's luxury horse-drawn carriage clatters over the stone roads as she heads back to her mansion. Sitting upright on the plush velvet cushions inside the carriage, Catherine maintains a stern, dignified posture while Harris sits across from her. The contrast between her straight face on the outside and her absolute chaos on the inside is pure gold. A massive inner monologue bubble pops up as Catherine screams at the top of her mental lungs in pure euphoria. A hilarious chibi visual shows her flailing her arms in pure excitement, celebrating the fact that Prince Aetius actually held a full conversation with her. Recalling his strange question, asking if she had anything else to say to him, confusion, she tilts her head, wondering why you would ask such a specific thing. A funny visual shows her internal thoughts firing at light speed like a frantic essay, while her actual response on the outside was a cold, blunt refusal. Gushing over his heroic rescue, she reminisces about how much more breathtaking Aetius looks in real life compared to her past memories. Replaying their brief dialogue, she smiles softly, admiring how unshakably righteous he remains through every single encounter. Oh no, she just realized her fatal mistake. She accidentally used his secret pet name right to his face. Suddenly, a terrifying realization hits her like a bolt of lightning as she remembers blurting out his intimate childhood nickname, A.T. Trembling in pure secondhand embarrassment, Catherine clutches her head and thrashes around on the carriage couch, cringing violently at how disgusted he must have been. Noticing her strange, frantic movements, Heroes politely calls out her name, snapping Catherine back to reality as she stammers a nervous response. Heros inquires gently about how her meeting went with Marquis Philios, asking if that parasitic noble demanded yet another lavish sponsorship from her funds. Stretching her arms high above her head with a long groan, Catherine exhales all the built-up tension from her chaotic day. With a satisfied smirk playing on her lips, she casually informs Heroes that she officially dumped her trash fiancé, leaving the loyal butler completely stunned. Catherine tries to dodge Heros's curiosity by acting stern, mocking tone, telling him not to question her decisions, hoping this little villainous front keeps him from prying any further. She internally sweats, shouting in her mind if he's really gonna nag her like a strict schoolmaster all over again. Look at Heroes blushing like an absolute puppy. The boy is down astronomical. To her total surprise, Heroes blushes bright red, covering his mouth in sweet embarrassment while glowing white flowers frame his face. With literal puppy ears appearing on his head, Heroes radiates pure adoration, leaving Catherine frozen in utter shock as she wonders if her butler actually has a crush on her. Meanwhile, at the Regalo residence, Philios slams his hands onto his desk in absolute horror, gasping, staring wide-eyed at the daily newspaper. The headlines tear his reputation to shreds, boldly branding him the liar of the century, publishing interviews from his ex-lovers and calling him ugly for the whole empire to read. Media did not hold back at all. They utterly obliterated this parasite's dignity. Losing his absolute mind, Philios tosses papers into the air, screaming at the top of his lungs like a maniac. Roars in pure rage, contemptuous laughter, cursing Catherine's name, while a vision of her laughing mockingly floats right behind him. Far across the estate courtyard, Prince Aetius stands quietly in front of the grand imperial building, staring into space with an unreadable expression. He flashes back to the cute pink memory of Catherine accidentally blurting out his intimate childhood nickname 80, leaving him subtly flustered inside. Look at Catherine living her best life. Destroying your toxic ex through media smear campaigns is standard villainous protocol. Back inside her luxurious office, Catherine happily reads the morning paper while Heroes claps in delighted applause. Tossing the newspaper onto her wooden desk, she smugly notes that the rich and powerful always dominate every single conflict. Heros hands her a stack of sealed letters with red wax seals, announcing that the high priest has officially approved her poorhouse project thanks to her persuasive letter. Catherine smiles smoothly, enjoying how effortlessly her grand strategy is unfolding. She's so proud of her ruthless methods. The villainous title is fitting her a little too well now. She smirks to herself, reflecting on how quickly the religious authority bound down to her influence. Giggling mischievously, Catherine mentally celebrates how convenient it is to play the bratty Villainess, realizing she can do whatever she wants without anyone questioning her. Standing before her desk while Heroes applauds energetically, she beams with utter satisfaction, calling this victory truly refreshing. Heroes praises her brilliance, pointing out how flawlessly she resolved the poorhouse issue while bribing every major newspaper agency to ruin Philios. Heroes is hype man of the decade. He's treating her shady, corrupt tactics like legendary statecraft. Glittering with intense admiration and pumping his fists, Heroes exclaims how deeply moved he is by her thoroughness, while Catherine inwardly sweats in awkwardness. He loudly proclaims that her genius counter-strategy makes her the undisputed true successor of the Elamore Duchy. Catherine drops her smile, sigh, deadpanning as she realizes that, described out loud, she just sounds like a cold, heartless criminal stacking up bad deeds. Quickly offering a sweet compliment, Catherine praises Heroes for running around all night contacting news outlets, but he frantically waves his hands in humble denial. A wild, loyal dog Heroes appears. He literally wants to be her loyal hound. Sprouting dog ears and a tail, Hero sparkles with fanatical devotion, loudly boasting he would gladly run around like a dog for her, making Catherine back away with a nervous sweat drop. But as the dust settles on Philios, Catherine remembers an even greater menace lurking in the shadows. Her scheming uncle, Padelman Elamore. She recalls the original novel storyline where Padelman bribed a corrupt judge with bags of gold coins to seize her estate. In that timeline, he cornered young Catherine inside the estate hall, slapping a provisional seizure on her full inheritance to force her into submission. Oh man, this uncle is pure evil. He's the final boss stand-in before the imperial court. Catherine's gaze hardens as she vows to completely crush her uncle to protect her wealth and safely sponsor Prince Atius. A soft knock echoes against her office door as a maid politely announces her brand new custom dress has arrived. Her vivid purple eye gleams with determination as she turns her head to check the delivery. The heavy wooden doors creak open softly, revealing the maid stepping inside with a covered garment rack. Whoa, look at that dress! That red and black gothic lace combination is insanely gorgeous. Catherine's eyes sparkle in utter amazement as the maid reveals a breathtaking crimson and black gothic ball gown dripping with elegant lace. Examining the elaborate gown, she remembers it was ordered prior to her father's funeral. Gasp, suddenly realizing that the imperial ball is right around the corner. Gently touching the delicate silk fabric, her heart flutters as she realizes attending this ball means she'll meet Atius again. She pauses in deep thought, her mind racing over the opportunity to share the same ballroom as her prince. Turning back toward Heroes, she briskly changes the subject, bringing up the poorhouse initiative again. She's using her charity projects purely as a secret cover to back Atius? That's high IQ play. She secretly smiles, knowing this public poorhouse campaign gives her the perfect cover to support Atius's political standing. Meanwhile, deep inside the Imperial Palace, Philios kneels before a high-ranking authority, frantically revealing that someone from the Emperor's faction is in secret contact with Atius. Philios viciously snitches on Catherine, claiming she is orchestrating a dark, treasonous conspiracy directly with Prince Atius. The Emperor sneers from his golden throne, acknowledging that while replacing the late Duke is tough, he won't hesitate to crush any potential treason immediately. Philios is desperate. He's literally betting his family's head on a fake conspiracy theory. Philios boasts smugly, promising that Catherine plans to exchange physical evidence with the prince at tonight's ball, prompting the Emperor to promise a lavish reward if true. However, the Emperor's tone turns sub-zero, warning that if Philios is lying, his entire family, including the Marquis and Marchioness, will face brutal execution. Sweating profusely, Philios bows nervously, stammering that he would never dare lie, frantically telling himself that his gamble cannot fail. Transitioning to the Grand Imperial Palace Ball, sparkling crystal chandeliers illuminate the opulent hall filled with noble guests. As Catherine enters wearing her striking crimson gown, neighboring aristocrats gasp, freeze in sheer horror, huddled together while shivering violently. Look at these poor side characters. Original Catherine really left a path of destruction everywhere she went. Traumatized nobles whisper in fear, recalling how asking her to dance resulted in getting slapped 5 times, while another slipped and got a bloody nose just trying to walk past her. A dramatic thought bubble highlights the hilarious fact that half the ballroom consists of Catherine's past victims. inwardly crying tears of pure, cringing agony. Catherine thrashes mentally, cringing over how much of a ruthless brat the original host was. She maintains a composed outer facade, sweat dropping as a crowd of aristocrats stares at her in paralyzed awe and panic. Among the crowd, a blonde noblewoman glares at Catherine with crossed arms and burning hostility. Gasp, clearly plotting something devious. Oh, snap! The Emperor has made his entrance. Things are about to go completely out of control. Suddenly, the royal announcer heralds the grand arrival of His Majesty the Emperor, causing Catherine to snap her head around with wide, tense eyes. And as the royal fanfare subsides, rows of distinguished nobles and palace attendants bow their heads in deep reverence. Catherine gently lowers herself into a flawless curtsy alongside the other noble ladies, seamlessly blending into imperial court etiquette. Stepping forward with a raised champagne glass, the Emperor addresses the Grand Hall, thanking everyone for gathering to celebrate the 15th anniversary of his succession.
Talk about an ultimate snake on the throne. He literally stole the empire from a 5-year-old orphan. Catherine's mind races as she identifies the Emperor as the main villain who usurped young Aetius, watching as the monarch casually glances toward his captive nephew.
Following the monarch's gaze, every noble looks towards Prince Aetius, who stands isolated in dark military attire with 2 heavily armed soldiers guarding his every move. Watching from across the ballroom, Catherine's heart aches as she notices how blatantly the imperial guards treat the young prince like a prisoner of state. She mentally rallies behind him, silently sending endless words of encouragement, holding on to her unwavering belief in his righteous character. Look at her having a total fangirl breakdown right in the middle of a high-stakes political ball. Remembering how she recently blurted out his intimate childhood nickname, 80, Catherine's face turns beet red as she thrashes in pure awkward embarrassment. Unable to hold his gaze for another second, she sharply turns her back on him, desperately trying to hide her burning blush. Left standing among his guards, Aetius tilts his head in utter confusion, wondering why Catherine suddenly snapped away from him. Raising his glass higher to reignite the party atmosphere, the Emperor grandly invites his guests to feast, drink, and enjoy the night. Look at these sycophants cheering. They'd applaud a rock if it wore a golden crown. The crowd erupts into enthusiastic cheers, raising their goblets in unison to honor the monarch. Leaning against a marble pillar, Catherine wipes away phantom exhaustion, reflecting on how draining it was to fake smiles for dozens of the Emperor's loyalist nobles. Seeking a brief moment of peace, she slips away down a quiet hallway. Gasp! Only for an authoritative voice to call out her name from behind. Her purple eye widens in dramatic surprise as she halts dead in her tracks. Turning slowly, she freezes in disbelief as the Emperor himself walks up to her with a casual glass of wine in hand. Red alert! The final boss just initiated direct conversation. This is not a drill. Catherine's mind goes into complete overdrive as she panics, wondering on earth why the ruler of the empire is approaching her personally. The monarch repeats her name softly, his calm expression hiding a dangerous intent. Inwardly screaming, Catherine frantically calculates her next move before her identity as a modern corporate survivor takes over. Dropping into a graceful low bow, she formally greets the Emperor, offering the highest level of courtly respect. Look at this fake fatherly smile. He's about to drop a massive trap, isn't he? The Emperor chuckles softly, offering fake praise about how much she has matured into a fine, noble lady. Looking around the grand ballroom, the monarch mentions how tragic her parents' sudden death was, while Catherine humbly apologizes for not paying her respects sooner. He waves off her apology with smooth sympathy, but Catherine's instincts flare up as she wonders why he's acting so unnaturally friendly. Reminiscing about the late Duke Elamor, the Emperor falsely claims her father was his dearest friend, expressing hope that Catherine will follow in his patriotic footsteps. His expression turns subtly probing as he suggests that she ought to share her late father's intense dedication to imperial security. Boom! There it is! He didn't come to offer condolences, he came to loot her father's secret vault. The Emperor drops his hidden motive, asking outright if she has read the classified documents her father left behind, while Aetius watches silently in the background. Catherine instantly connects the dots, realizing the Emperor is desperately hunting for the Class 1 classified list containing the names of the Revolutionary Army. Recognizing that the tyrant wants this list to eradicate Aetius and his entire rebellion, Catherine quickly forces a look of deep sorrow and panic. Covering her mouth with a delicate gloved hand, she tearfully apologizes, claiming that almost all of her father's documents were destroyed in a fire. Look at his smiling mask completely shatter. He was not expecting that answer at all. The Emperor's pleasant smile vanishes instantly, his eyes narrowing as he demands to know what she means. Flashing back to the chaotic night in her mansion, Catherine explains that a fire broke out in the private study shortly after the funeral, burning the archives to ashes. Bowing her head in feigned remorse, she blames her own negligence during her period of deep grief, pleading for the sovereign's forgiveness. While putting her on a helpless, grieving orphan front surrounded by delicate flowers, she inwardly smirks, taking total pride in having burned those dangerous papers herself. Trapped by her flawless performance and public records, the emperor realizes he cannot possibly punish a grieving daughter for an accidental household tragedy.
Forcing a small, accommodating smile, he remarks that losing old papers is unfortunate, but pales in comparison to losing her legendary father. Her corporate BS skills just saved her life and saved the entire revolution. Give this girl a promotion. Patting her shoulder dismissively, the emperor tells her not to worry, completely buying into her act. Turning on his heel, the ruler glides back into the crowd of adoring nobles, leaving Catherine standing alone in victory. Catherine exhales a huge sigh of relief, internally thanking her brutal corporate past for giving her master-level experience in dealing with toxic bosses. Flashback images show the inferno consuming the secret library shells, giving her total confidence that official fire department reports will back up her claim forever. She recalls that in the original novel, Atius nearly died trying to retrieve that list, wondering if the prince overheard her clever excuse to the emperor. Glancing surreptitiously across the hall, her eyes lock onto Adius, who still stands tall surrounded by royal guards. The prince gazes back at her with a calm, profound intensity, his sharp eyes holding an unreadable emotion. That eye contact across the crowded ballroom was straight out of a movie! The chemistry is unmatched. Catherine stares back with wide purple eyes, feeling an electric spark pass between them across the noisy crowd. Breaking the stare? Adius slowly turns around and walks away down the long red carpet, silently leaving the main hall. Relaxing her tense shoulders, Catherine smiles softly, comforted knowing that Adius no longer has to risk his life hunting for that dangerous paper trail. She clutches her hands together in hope that Hero successfully delivered her care package to the prince when a screeching voice suddenly shouts her name. Turning around, she finds a blonde noblewoman strutting over with a condescending sneer, accompanied by two gossiping sidekicks waving fans to mock her. Recognizing the newcomer as Lucia Elamore, the illegitimate daughter of her greedy uncle Padelmon, Catherine prepares herself for another petty royal headache. Oh great, here comes the classic envious side villain. She really picked the absolute worst day to mess with Catherine. Lucia raises her ornate hand fan to hide her smirk, mockingly bringing up Catherine's recent messy breakup with Philios to humiliate her in public. Flanked by her cackling cronies, Lucia snickers arrogantly, telling Catherine she needs to snap back to reality, unaware that she's poking an absolute monster. Turning away with a cool, composure-filled side profile, Catherine reflects on how Lucia used to act fake-friendly toward Catherine back in the day. Her modern corporate instincts kick in, remembering how two-faced coworkers would act like best friends, only to instantly exclude her the second office rumors started circulating. She knows Lucia's manipulative type all too well. Flashing a bright, saintly smile, Catherine pleasantly tells Lucia not to worry, casually dropping that she actually managed to salvage quite a few documents from the estate fire. Talk about turning the tables! She just pulled out a massive financial Uno reverse card. Lucia's face turns pale with shock, while Catherine sweetly explains that she saved her uncle's massive unpaid IOUs and plans on collecting every single penny immediately. Lucia completely loses her composure, screeching Catherine's name at the top of her lungs, while her snobby sidekicks look on in utter disbelief. Walking past her with an effortless air, Catherine offhandedly mentions finding spicy dirt on Lucia's mother too, causing the blonde noblewoman to shriek in pure panic as she desperately tries to chase after her. Modern corporate survival skills take full effect as Catherine smirks inwardly, knowing the absolute best way to handle fake bullies is to crush them with public humiliation. Look at her having a complete meltdown right in the middle of the ballroom. She naturally got annihilated without Catherine even lifting a finger. Lucia faints into her friend's arms, completely overwhelmed by total shame. Meanwhile, night falls over the grand imperial palace, shining under a peaceful, starry sky. Out in the quiet courtyards, Philios steps out of his carriage, glancing back toward the glowing castle windows with a heavy, troubled gaze.
His mind churns as he reflects on everything he lost, foolishly believing he can somehow reclaim his former standing. He glares into the dark night, convinced that his ultimate key to power and status lies right within his reach. Over in the private Imperial wing, Prince Aetius quietly enters his quarters, carrying a dark cloak over his arm. Approaching his desk, he turns the handle and slides open a concealed compartment. Wait, is that what I think it is? Heroes actually pulled through. To his absolute astonishment, a giant mountain of documents and papers spills out across the table. Picking up one of the fresh pages, Aetius stares in sheer disbelief, wondering who could have possibly snuck into his private chamber to drop off this massive pile. Suddenly, the scene shifts to the throne room, where palace guards violently slam Phileas's bribed informant to the marble floor as he begs for mercy. Seated high on his golden throne, the emperor stares down at the paper with cold, dead eyes, while the trembling informant desperately claims Catherine was secretly delivering massive rebellion funds to Aetius. Sweating buckets, the greedy snitch forces a nervous smile, naively expecting a huge royal bounty for exposing Catherine's secret operation. Oh man, he really thought he was getting a promotion? Welcome to the real world, buddy. Instead of gold, the emperor violently hurls the document right onto his face. With a chilling, ruthless sneer, the monarch commands the snitch to read out loud what was actually written on that mysterious paper. Hands trembling violently, the informant unfolds the sheet, his eyes widening in total confusion. It turns out to be an advertisement flyer for a local poorhouse, promising free grocery pouches and sleeping kits to anyone who brings the coupon. She literally swapped out high-stakes rebellion intel for a homeless shelter discount coupon. Catherine is an absolute comedy genius. The informant frantically flips the paper back and forth, searching in vain for any hidden message. Realizing he brought a literal coupon to a ruthless tyrant, the informant sweats profusely as a soul leaves his body. Her dropping to his knees, he desperately stammers that his sources swore Catherine was smuggling critical rebellion documents inside the carriage. The emperor remembers Catherine's tragic, tearful performance from earlier, realizing how perfectly her story aligned with reality. The emperor reflects on how he originally dismissed her as an incompetent, foolish girl who let her late father's archives go up in flames. Smirking devilishly, the emperor misinterprets her brilliant move, believing Catherine intentionally sent poorhouse flyers to insult and mock Aetius's impoverished state. Wasting a tyrant's time is basically a speed run to a dungeon cell. Rip to that guy. Without an ounce of hesitation, the emperor orders his guards to drag the useless snitch straight to the dungeon for wasting imperial time. The helpless informant kicks and screams, pleading for mercy as guards ruthlessly pull him out of the grand hall. Outside the palace, his muffled screams echo into the night sky, while Catherine calmly smiles from afar, knowing her trap worked flawlessly. Walking toward her luxury carriage, Catherine glances back, smirking at Phileas's utter stupidity for falling into her obvious bait. Hero steps forward with professional grace, gently extending his gloved hand to assist Catherine up into the carriage. Noticing her triumphant expression, Heroes remarks how pleased she looks, to which Catherine brightly replies that everything went according to plan. She reminds Heroes to generously pay off the household servant who acted like a traitor to leak fake information directly to Phileas. She literally staged a whole fake spy ring inside her own house just to wreck her ex-fiancé. Her brain operates on 5D chess levels. Catherine nods smugly, acknowledging that her trash ex was surprisingly persistent with his dirty tactics. A flashback reveals how Heroes instructed the servant to subtly feed Phileas false rumors about a secret delivery, setting up the entire hilarious disaster. Stepping into the private carriage, a loose sheet of paper accidentally slips out from under her dress and flutters to the floor. Realizing she dropped something, Catherine bends down, noticing she still had a few extra poorhouse flyers remaining in her handbag. Unfolding the paper under the dim carriage light, her eyes scan the text. Exhaling a soft sigh, she rests the document across her lap, taking a moment to unwind after such a chaotic evening. Looking out the window into the starry night, her mind wanders back to the ballroom, vividly recalling Prince Aetius's striking, handsome face. Look at her go in total fangirl mode again. She cannot handle how hot the main male lead is. She internally squeals over how insanely attractive Aetius looked even when he was pissed off, swooning over his broad shoulders and built forearms. Imagining him in modern executive attire, she marvels that with those killer looks, he would have easily been a billionaire model in her former world. Swooning in pure delight, Catherine gazes at the night sky, secretly wishing to cross paths with the brooding prince again very soon. The next morning, bright sunlight streams through the lush green trees as birds sing cheerfully outside. A few days quickly pass, bringing peaceful calm back to the Elmore estate. Inside her grand study, Catherine sits at her massive wooden desk, reviewing financial reports and estate business alongside her trusted servants. Oh boy, check out that devious smirk. She's definitely cooking up another high-level scheme. Looking up from her papers, Catherine's purple eyes glint with mischievous ambition as a cunning smile spreads across her face. Catherine scans her morning paper with beaming eyes, gasping in pure delight as she discovers her secret financial gamble paid off big time. Kicking her feet back and forth in total bliss, she cheers out loud over her genius choice to buy up shares in the Montella mines. Suddenly, Heroes walks into the room, catching her mid-happy dance as she instantly freezes up like a deer in headlights. Blushing furiously, Catherine lets out a quick throat cough, desperately trying to regain her regal posture while burying her face back in the newspaper. She reads through the main headline, glowing as the article highlights how the Grand Duke of Montella personally expressed his deepest gratitude for her investment. Honestly, you can't even blame her for celebrating. Making free money hits totally different when you're already rich. Snickering to herself, she reflects on how satisfying it feels to watch her bank balance multiply without lifting a single finger. She recalls reading in the original novel that Montella held a massive hidden mineral vein, making her investment a guaranteed gold mine that secures her massive emergency funds once she seeks asylum after the revolution. Leaning back in her plush carved chair, Catherine takes a moment to admire how smoothly all her secret plans are unfolding. She idly taps her dainty fingers on the polished wooden desk, soaking in the quiet peacefulness of her private office. Catching the sudden motion, her young maid Annis flinches violently, bowing her head down in absolute panic. Catherine blinks in utter confusion, wondering why the poor girl got so terrified when she barely even moved a muscle. Yikes! Look at her imagining Catherine pulling out a literal whip. The previous Villainess really left trauma on these poor workers. Realizing the original Catherine treated her staff like dirt, she immediately understands why the servants tremble whenever she looks their way. Looking closer at Anne's, Catherine's eyes narrow as she notices deep dark circles under her eyes and a complete lack of sleep. Taking in her cuts-covered hands and filthy, ragged uniform, Catherine gasps in horror, realizing the girl looks less like an imperial servant and more like an abused slave. Exhaling a heavy sigh, Catherine rubs her forehead, knowing her modern conscience won't allow her to ignore such terrible conditions, even if she has to stay in Villainess character. Suddenly, a brilliant light bulb sparks in her head, giving her the perfect corporate loophole. Interlocking her fingers with a chillingly arrogant gaze, she summons Heros in her most dramatic, haughty Villainess voice, reminding him she only tolerates looking at beautiful things. Look at Heros playing along so smoothly. He literally gave her a 10 out of 10 for aesthetic standards. Hero smiles politely, agreeing completely that her ladyship possesses the finest eye for beauty in the entire empire. Catherine violently slams both palms onto her desk, demanding to know why Annis looks so utterly hideous and unkempt in her sight. Trembling like a leaf, poor Anne stammers out her lady's name, terrified she's about to be executed on the spot. Flashing a dramatic smirk, Catherine orders Heroes to immediately fit Anne's with high-quality, decent clothes, leaving the shocked maid hyperventilating that her ruthless master actually remembered her name. Meanwhile, over in the palace dungeons, the disgraced snitch sits behind iron bars, sobbing uncontrollably, begging the emperor for mercy. Catherine reflects back on her former life in the modern world, remembering how even with strict labor laws, modern office workers were treated like unpaid slaves, forced into surprise all-nighters. Waking up on a Sunday morning just to commute to an office? That is straight-up corporate horror right there. She shudders, remembering how brutal weekend shifts destroyed her days off back when she was just another tired employee. Burning with fiery rage, she vows that as a former victim of corporate abuse, she refuses to let slave labor happen under her roof. Pointing her finger commandingly, Catherine orders Anne's and Heroes to assemble every single estate servant at once. She commands that brand new custom uniforms, premium grooming kits, and high-end clothes be issued to the entire household staff to maintain proper Elmore dignity. Sweeping her hands over delicious banquets, she insists that every servant receive lavish multi-course meals so nobody ever goes hungry again. To top it all off, she slashes their grueling work shifts down to a mandatory 5-day work week with 2 full days off, completely stunning Heroes and Annis. Heros is out here worrying about imperial workplace precedents while Catherine is out here devising the 2-day weekend. Heros scratches his chin thoughtfully, warning her that giving staff weekend breaks will make their household wildly different from every other noble family.
Ennis looks on with wide, hopeful eyes as Catherine coldly raises an eyebrow in response.
Catherine forcefully declares that this is the Ellimore estate.
With fierce pride shining in her eyes, she announces that everyone living under her roof will strictly follow Ellimore rules and Ellimore standards. The room fills with a soft, peaceful atmosphere as pink flower petals drift through the air. Staring at his mistress, Hero smiles softly, deeply moved by her surprisingly merciful and noble leadership. Catherine dismisses them with a wave of her hand, telling them to stop standing around gaping and get straight to work. Heros and Annis bow deeply in absolute reverence, responding in unison to execute her orders. The study door clicks softly as it swings shut behind them. Standing out in the hallway with a pounding heart, Annis gasps softly, realizing her terrifying young lady has truly transformed into a benevolent angel. She went full corporate CEO union boss inside an Otomi game. Talk about employee retention strategies. Slumping back into her armchair, Chibi Catherine wipes sweat from her forehead, hoping her angry act was believable enough to keep them from suspecting her true identity. Gazing down at her desk, Catherine knows that winning over the servants is crucial to building a loyal faction inside her own home. Remembering how arrogantly Lucia strutted up to her during the ball, she calculates her next strategic move in the Empire's high-stakes political chess game. She predicts that her greedy uncle, Padalman Ellimore, will attempt to contact her very soon to leech off her inheritance. She analyzes the factional war, noting that while teaming up with the late Emperor's supporters could counter Padalman, her own father was famously the current Emperor's top enforcer. Approaching the late Emperor's side would instantly spark intense paranoia among the nobles, exposing her movements. Her uncle Padalman and the current Emperor would both turn their dark, watchful gazes directly onto her. Oh man, taking one wrong step in imperial politics literally gets you a free ticket to the guillotine. She knows that leaking her political ties would put an immediate death target right on her back. Imagining a heavy steel blade shining under a blood-red sky, Catherine shudders at the thought of losing her head. Letting out a soft, longing breath, she gazes toward the window, wishing she could freely fund Prince Adius's rebellion without triggering an imperial execution. Holding her newspaper tightly, her eyes shine with sharp determination, ready to outsmart every tyrant standing in her way. Scanning through her desk documents, Catherine's eyes lock onto an official bounty paper tucked inside her private files. Her purple eyes widen in complete shock, instantly recognizing the high-profile face printed right across the parchment. Meanwhile, warm lantern light softly illuminates the grand wooden hallway of the Ellimore servants' quarters. Look at Heroes acting like Santa Claus in a tuxedo. He's literally handing out corporate care packages. Heroes claps his gloved hands together, politely instructing all the household staff to check their private rooms immediately. The servants murmur in bewildered confusion, wondering if they're about to face another harsh reprimand. Heroes offers a warm, reassuring smile, announcing that their generous young mistress prepared personal gifts for every single one of them. The young maid gasps to her coworker, gasping, unable to believe that Catherine cut their brutal work hours while granting them individual wages. She turned a house of pure terror into a top-tier workplace with benefits. Talk about an S-tier boss upgrade. The maids wipe away happy tears, gushing over how kind and compassionate their young lady has suddenly become. Stepping into his quiet room, Heroes pauses as a gentle beam of sunlight streams across his floor. Resting neatly on his table lies a brand new tailored suit, alongside a personal card from Catherine. Blushing softly, flustered, Heroes stares at the luxurious gift, his heart fluttering at her thoughtful gesture. Hold up, what kind of secret letter is Heroes pulling out right now? The suspense is real. Unfolding the confidential letter with trembling hands, Heroes reads the private contents in total silence. Lowering the letter toward a flickering candle flame, he reflects on how drastically Catherine Ellimore has transformed. Watching the dark ink vanish into fiery embers, Heroes remembers how the original Villainess spent her days throwing violent tantrums over every petty detail. He recalls how she used to rule the estate with ruthless arrogance, striking terror into anyone who dared cross her path. Yeah, the old Catherine was a full-time nightmare, but post-funeral Catherine is out here saving lives. He vividly remembers the exact moment everything changed, right after her father's funeral. A catastrophic fire suddenly consumed the Grand State study, threatening to burn the entire mansion to ashes. Sprinting through the smoke-filled corridor, Hero shielded Catherine as blazes engulfed the wooden doors. Shouting over the roaring fire, Catherine commanded him to leave the study closed and evacuate every servant at once.
Wait, Harros was actually ready to sacrifice his life just for some corporate paperwork? Bro needs self-preservation.
Harros insisted on risking his life inside the Inferno to retrieve her family's confidential documents. He argued that Imperial secrets were far more valuable than the lives of common household staff.
Catherine whipped around in pure fury, her eyes blazing hotter than the flames around them.
She screamed at the top of her lungs, forcefully cutting off his ridiculous sacrifice. Grabbing Harros forcefully by his collar, she yanked him down into her gaze. She barked directly into his face, declaring that human lives are infinitely more precious than useless papers, and that included his own life too.
That bossy hero moment hit him so hard, his entire worldview shattered on the spot. Commanding him to focus on saving everyone, Catherine's fierce words left Harros completely stunned as his heart pounded uncontrollably.
Present-day Harros clutches his chest tightly, his fingertips digging into his shirt. Blushing intensely, flustered, embarrassed, he admits to himself that his heart races every single time he thinks about that day. He shudders softly, remembering the vivid sensation of her sharp grip pulling his collar. Bro is low-key an absolute masochist. He literally wants her to bully him again. I can't even. Resting his flushed cheek on his gloved hand, Harros secretly wishes his fierce young lady would treat him just a little bit rougher. Bright morning sky shines above the bustling town square as leaves rustle in the warm breeze. Today marks the grand public opening ceremony of the Ellamore Poorhouse. Standing near the entrance, a squad of snobbish noble ladies cross their arms arrogantly, scowling at the event setup. Here comes the Mean Girls Club right on schedule. They can't stand seeing someone else do actual good work. They pettily gossip among themselves, mocking Catherine for desperate clout chasing since she never donated a single penny before. Flicking her blonde hair back snobbishly, Lucia scoffs that Catherine knows nothing about high society rules and deserves to be dragged in the news. Suddenly, a sharp, commanding voice cuts right through the air, reading out the scripture quote about hypocrites who wag their tongues. Stepping up right behind him with a sly, devious smirk, Catherine fans herself gracefully while asking Harros to complete the holy verse. Catherine pulling up with her personal butler just to deliver a high society burn is legendary behavior. Harros smoothly replies that scripture refers to such people as utterly useless trash, leaving the noble ladies trembling in shock. Catherine coolly calls out their toxic gossip in front of the entire crowd, declaring their behavior utterly vulgar. Tilting her head back dramatically, Catherine loudly asks if they'd prefer to tell the needy crowds to their faces that they came here to destroy their shelter. Nearby commoners turn around, glaring harshly at the snobbish ladies as loud, angry murmurs ripple through the crowd. Look at the crowd giving them the ultimate death stare. They picked the absolute worst neighborhood to act elitist. Trapped under dozens of furious gazes, the noble ladies sweat nervously in absolute terror. Realizing they're about to be swarmed, the dark-haired noble lady grabs Lucia's arm in total panic, begging to escape immediately. They turn on their heels and scurry away like humiliated rats, while Catherine watches them leave without moving a single step. Chibi Catherine giving that petty humph is top-tier satisfaction, absolute queen energy. Folded arms held high, Chibi Catherine smirks arrogantly, dismissing those mean girls as complete nobodies. Trembling with burning humiliation, Lucia clenches her fist tightly as shadowy thorns encircle her bitter gaze. Inside the grand dining hall, hundreds of impoverished citizens sit comfortably at warm banquet tables, enjoying free hearty meals. Catherine watches the thriving crowd from her balcony, taking deep pride in the flawless success of her charity launch.
Look at her in chibi mode, completely drained after giving one speech. Public speaking really is the final boss. Later back in her office, Chibi Catherine sips her hot tea, sweating over how terrifyingly nervous she was during her opening speech. Clasped hands resting gently, Catherine smiles with soft optimism, praying that this secret shelter network successfully aids the Revolutionary Army in their fight for freedom. Tapping on her glowing magical status screen, Catherine zooms in on Prince Adius's army logistics, determined to inspect their exact inventory breakdown. The illuminated system window lays out his military stats in complete detail, revealing a desperate shortage of weapons, a 30-day food supply, and meager funds holding his revolution together. Her secret care package delivery actually saved the entire rebel army from starvation. Talk about being an absolute savior. Smiling warmly at the updated numbers, Catherine feels immense relief knowing her secret shipments of medical supplies and field gear bought the prince's forces an entire month of breathing room. Sipping her warm tea, she reasons that Atias is simply physically exhausted from starvation, and proper nutrition will soon restore his strength completely.
Suddenly, a polite knock echoes against her office door as a servant announces the arrival of unannounced evening visitors. Look at that devious smirk! She knew exactly who was coming to her doorstep tonight. Setting her teacup down with a sly grin, Catherine instructs her staff to send the late-night guests inside immediately. Heavy leather boots clatter across the polished wooden floor as secretive figures step into her dimly lit room. 3 imposing, cloaked men wearing dark face masks stand before her, exuding an unmistakably dangerous aura. Catherine's eyes sparkle with excitement, realizing these dangerous men finally swallowed her bait and agreed to negotiate a deal. In the original novel, these shadowy figures belong to the Scavengers, an infamous underground syndicate trading in forbidden dark goods and lethal intelligence. Their leader, Jeffrey Whistler, is literally the ultimate morally gray underground boss. Bro trades secrets like Pokemon cards. At the apex of this criminal empire stood Jeffrey Whistler, a mysterious leader whose true identity remained shrouded in absolute secrecy. In the original story, Prince Atias sought out Jeffrey after his successful rebellion to systematically wipe out the remaining Imperial loyalists. Staring into Jeffrey's shadowed mask, Atias made a desperate bargain that would cost him far more than gold. In exchange for the crucial intelligence needed to secure his throne, Jeffrey demanded a terrifying price, stealing the functional use of Atias's left lung. Knowing a fully healthy emperor would inevitably crush the Scavengers, Jeffrey intentionally crippled Atias to maintain his syndicate's power. Scuffs, while the prince blindly agreed just to stabilize his empire. That cruel bargain completely ruined Atias' health. He fought an entire revolution just to die from a corrupted deal. With his respiratory system failing, the young emperor's body rapidly deteriorated until his golden crown fell to the ground in an untimely death. This hooded criminal mastermind was the primary architect behind Prince Atias' tragic downfall. Though Catherine despised Jeffrey while reading the original novel, she realizes his ruthlessness makes him the ultimate secret partner for her current political scheme. She recalls the single identifying physical trait documented about the elusive syndicate leader: his striking amber-brown eyes. Returning to the present, golden evening light floods Catherine's grand reception room as she sits comfortably across from the masked mercenaries. She reflects that intercepting Jeffrey before Atias ever meets him is the key to preventing the prince's fatal fate. She's out here playing 4-dimensional chess while these intimidating assassins are sitting like nervous interview candidates. Knowing she cannot reach the top boss directly just yet, she focuses her attention on the 3 representatives sitting stiffly on her luxury velvet couch. Heroes clears his throat with a subtle fake cough, causing the entire trio of masked mercenaries to flinch in total surprise. Adjusting his hood, the lead merc places his hand on his chest, introducing himself as Kane, the primary action leader of the Scavengers. Kane fixes his sharp gaze on her, questioning how a high society noble lady managed to locate their top secret hideout in a shady underworld tavern. He slides an invitation letter across the table, demanding to know how she uncovered their confidential communication channels. Oh, she pulled up to a sketchy criminal bar looking like a shadowy boss. That confidence is next level. Recalling her covert visit to the tavern disguised in a dark cloak, Catherine maintains an unbothered, playful expression. Smiling coolly over her warm tea, she remarks that her direct visit was entirely worth it, since it brought their elite unit straight to the ducal residence. Placing her teacup down with a soft clink, she casually states that tracking down their hideout was simple enough and gets straight to business. She openly reveals her motive, declaring that she needs an elite shadowy force that her greedy uncle, Paddlemon Elamor, cannot possibly bribe. She didn't just recruit them, she did full background research on their corporate beef. Catherine smirks, exposing how her uncle has been actively sabotaging the Scavengers' illegal operations behind the scenes. Kane gasps in utter shock, startled that a sheltered young heiress knows their secret organizational troubles. She points out that the Scavengers run high-stakes underground gambling dens exclusively frequented by the Imperial nobility. She details how Padelmon used trumped-up legal excuses to force a total shutdown of their casinos, weaponizing state power to choke their syndicate profits. Splitting her gaze between them, Catherine asserts that letting Padelman's authority expand would ruin their syndicate while threatening her own family fortune. Clasping her hands, she casually presents her proposition, asking if there's any logical reason they shouldn't form an immediate alliance. Calling her loyal butler forward, Catherine gives a quiet nod toward Heros, dropping a massive bag of pure gold right on the table. That's how you negotiate like a true boss. Heros steps up and thumps a massive, heavy sack of gold directly onto the coffee table, leaving Kane completely speechless. Catherine smiles gracefully, offering the enormous sum as a simple gesture of goodwill for their long journey to her estate. She knows that when dealing with an underground crime guild, empty promises mean nothing compared to cold hard cash. Overwhelmed by the sheer amount of wealth before him, Kane bows his head, officially accepting her proposal. The three mercenaries sit attentively, their hands resting neatly on their knees as they prepare for instructions. Kane asks respectfully where their syndicate should begin executing her strategic plans. Look at that triumphant villainous smile. She's about to ruin her uncle's entire career. Flanked by glowing floral blooms, Catherine flashes a brilliant, cunning grin, announcing that their real work starts right now. A vibrant blue butterfly dances above golden yellow rose gardens under a clear morning sky. Outside a magnificent white imperial palace, a concerned royal nanny shouts out, warning the young prince not to wander off too far. Delicate blue butterfly flutters near a small child's hand, landing softly against his sleeve. Baby Adius was so small and fragile back then. Seeing his sad little face breaks my heart. Sitting alone in the lush gardens, a young, dark-haired Prince Adius gazes quietly at the delicate insect with sad, hollow eyes. In a somber memory inside a grand cathedral funeral, a gentle hand rests on young Adius's head, urging the grieving prince to remain strong after the emperor's sudden passing. Standing beside him in heavy black funeral veils, a veiled noblewoman whispers an ominous warning that countless vultures will target his fragile throne now that he is young and defenseless. Young Adius stares down into the garden dirt, overwhelmed by his father's final words echoing in his mind as he silently asks himself if he will truly never see his father again. Looking at the vibrant rose bushes surrounding him, the young prince can barely fathom that the immense burden of the imperial throne now rests on his small shoulders. Gazing at the delicate pink petals glistening in the sunlight, he softly reflects on how pretty they look, subtly reminding him of someone special. Oh, poor baby Adius sitting all alone in the garden. The emotional trauma this poor kid had to endure is heartbreaking. He crouches low along the cobblestone path, completely lost in thought until subtle footsteps approach from behind. Turning his head in sudden surprise, the young prince notices a towering shadow looming directly over his shoulder. Standing before him with an intimidating presence is Duke Elamor himself, exuding an icy, oppressive authority. Young Adius swallows nervously, wondering what urgent business the powerful Duke could possibly have with a grieving child. Look at that terrifying smirk! Duke Elamor is literally giving pure villain energy right now. Leaning down close, Duke Elamor delivers a chilling whisper, commanding the young prince to keep a low profile if he wishes to stay alive. The Duke coldly warns that failing to obey will guarantee his immediate death, leaving Adius completely paralyzed with fear. Stunned by the sinister threat, Adius stammers in utter confusion, asking what the Duke could possibly mean as Elamor turns away without another word. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream of fire shatters the peaceful silence of the royal garden. The entire palace is literally up in flames. This ruthless villain wasted no time executing his scheme. Young Adius gasps in shock as massive, fiery explosions rip through the upper towers of the royal residence. Duke Elamor stands motionless, watching the inferno consume the grand estate, while Atius looks on in absolute horror. Realizing his mother is trapped inside the burning wing, Adius yells in panic and attempts to sprint toward the blazing entrance. Before he can take more than a few steps, Duke Elamor's firm hand clamps onto his shoulder like a steel vice. Duke Elamor physically stopping a child from saving his own mother? This guy's irredeemable trash. Desperately pulling against the Duke's grip, Adius screams that his mother is still inside and that they cannot just stand around doing nothing. Duke Elamor tightens his grasp, callously anchoring the crime boy to the spot as embers rain down around them. Thrashing in complete agony, young Aetus cries out at the top of his lungs, begging to be freed so he can save his mother from the inferno. Terrified shouts of alarm resonate across the grounds as the raging flames devour the palace walls. Watching the entire cathedral tower collapse in flames while he screams for his mom, this flashback is
brutal. Athea screams in total heartbroken despair as the massive cathedral tower buckles under the blaze and crashes down. Reaching his small hand toward the catastrophic inferno, the helpless prince wails for his mother as heavy smoke engulfs the entire sky. Shifting back to the present day, morning sunlight filters through the quiet wooden alleyways of a remote village hideout. Sitting atop a wooden barrel, adult Prince Aetius stares bitterly at a fresh roll of bread in his hands, reflecting on how Duke Elamor stole his birthright and forced his forces to rely on food sponsored by that very estate. Bro is having a full existential crisis over a loaf of fresh bread. Talk about dramatic character development. Squeezing the warm pastry in frustration, Aetius admits to himself that despite his resolve to lead the revolution forward, his current situation feels pathetic. He rests his hands on his knees while staring down, admitting that an overwhelming sense of unease continues to haunt his mind. Looking out into the distance with a hardened, handsome gaze, he remains haunted by memories of his treacherous past. His thoughts unexpectedly drift back to Catherine, recalling her striking pink hair and haughty demeanor during their previous encounters. He takes a deliberate bite of the warm roll, chewing slowly as the savory flavor spreads across his tongue. Surprise flashes across his eyes as he recognizes the rich aroma of high-quality butter used to bake the dough. Looking down at the half-eaten loaf, he considers how vastly different this top-tier food is from his past expectations. He really thought Catherine was going to send him maggot-infested bread. The lack of trust is hilarious. He recalls how the original Catherine he knew would have gladly fed his rebel forces spoiled, bug-ridden scraps without a second thought. Nearby, two young village girls chatter animatedly while gathering their daily rations from the distribution center. Cute, decorative ribbons frame the lively atmosphere of the shelter, highlighting the joy of the well-fed commoners. Listening closely from his perch on the barrel, Aetius watches the common folk laughing heartily as they enjoy their hot meals. The young girls pump their fists with excitement, loudly praising the generous princess who made this massive feast possible. Seeing the commoners worship Catherine while Aetius sits there stunned is top-tier irony. They happily exclaim that Princess Catherine personally provided this delicious bread, calling her the coolest noble in the entire empire. Aetius freezes in shock, his blue eyes widening as he processes that Catherine is the secret benefactor behind their survival. He recalls her terrible reputation among high society nobles, where she was infamous for throwing drinks and causing chaotic scenes. He begins questioning whether her abrasive public persona was merely a cover, wondering who the real Catherine Elamor truly is behind closed doors. He visualizes her elegant figure standing surrounded by bright floral blooms, radiating undeniable confidence and grace. Look at how stunning the artist drew Catherine in that crimson velvet dress. She looks like absolute royalty. He remembers her turning around in her lavish red dress, her fierce gaze burning directly into his memory. Her radiant aura leaves him completely mesmerized, further confusing his feelings about her true political motives. A faint, gentle smile tugs at the corner of Aetius's lips as he quietly admires her bold intellect and secretive generosity. Catching himself, Aetius quickly clears his throat, visibly flustered that he was caught swooning over his political rival. Suddenly, hurried bootsteps clatter across the dirt path as a rebel messenger approaches in a panic. Running up out of breath, his spectacled aide frantically reports that urgent news just arrived from the government offices. Aetius's relaxed mood instantly vanishes, replaced by a sharp, deadly serious expression as he turns to listen to the report. Meanwhile, on a secluded cobbled road leading toward the Elamor Duchy, dark-cloaked figures ambush a luxury green carriage. Scavengers actually pulled up and staged a whole fake ambush. Catherine's master plan is moving fast. Inside the coach, Catherine sits completely unbothered, her sharp purple eyes gleaming with calculated mischief as her hired mercenaries surround the carriage with drawn blades. Armed scavenger mercenaries encircle the green carriage in broad daylight, setting the stage for Catherine's brilliant counterattack against her greedy uncle. The cloaked assassin sent by Duke Pedelman unsheaths his steel blade with a sinister hiss, coldly whispering that he will make her death completely painless. Peering from the carriage window, Catherine instantly recognizes the crest on their cloaks, realizing her treacherous uncle did not even bother hiding his identity to ensure her demise. Suddenly, green-cloaked scavenger mercenaries rush out from the tree line, completely surrounding the private soldiers who yell in utter shock. She literally brought an entire mercenary guild as her personal bodyguards. Catherine is playing four-dimensional chess right now. Catherine chuckles softly to herself as her hired mercenaries clash weapons with the assassins, catching the ambushers completely off guard.
Parrying a heavy strike with impressive strength, a scavenger warrior yells out to protect the young lady at all costs. Turning inside the coach toward Heros, Catherine sharpens her purple eyes and asks if her special equipment is ready, to which he nods in confirmation. Heros reaches down to retrieve a sleek wooden bow and a full quiver of arrows, while Catherine firmly grips the weapon, whisperingly keeping her past secrets hidden. Heros offering his hand like a true gentleman while she's casually prepping to snipe assassins is such a funny contrast. Offering his hand to assist her down from the carriage, Heros reassuringly promises to cover her safety while they maneuver through the chaotic fray. The moment Catherine and Heros sprint toward the dense tree line, the lead assassin shouts in desperation for his men to pursue her into the woods. Heros swiftly draws his sword and cuts down an approaching guard, allowing Catherine to take advantage of the chaos while reflecting on her careful preparation. Navigating the lush, overgrown paths side by side, Catherine and Heros lead the pursuing attackers deeper into the secluded forest layout. Look at the rose petals blossoming in the background artistic frame. The studio went so hard on this dramatic shift. Deeply focusing her breath, Catherine feels a sudden surge of adrenaline as vivid red flowers bloom in her mind's eye.
She draws a sharp arrow against the taut bowstring with absolute mastery, quietly declaring to herself that she can handle any threat they throw her way.
Deep inside her memories, she recalls her original life back in modern Korea, where she was once a star national archery athlete training vigorously with modern compound bows. Her promising career came to a tragic halt inside a gloomy hospital room, where her doctor grimly informed her that even extensive rehabilitation could not repair her damaged arm. Learning her whole athletic career was shattered by a drunk driver is so devastating. Poor girl went through so much pain. The heartbreaking diagnosis shattered her dreams, making it permanently impossible for her to ever compete in professional archery again. Standing frail in her hospital pajamas with double arm slings, she was left to grieve the catastrophic traffic accident caused entirely by a reckless drunk driver. Though the criminal was brought to justice, her world was forever changed, forcing her to abandon sports and spend late nights buried in study books. She pushed herself through an ordinary university program, trying her best to build a quiet, stable future despite her permanent injury. Corporate life after losing your life passion sounds so soul-crushing. She really was fighting uphill battles everywhere. After graduation, she secured a standard office position, expecting a peaceful life away from high-stakes drama. Her quiet routine was shattered when her creepy superior cornered her, demanding she accept his romantic advances. After she politely rejected his inappropriate confession, her boss retaliated by turning the entire workplace environment hostile against her. Flaring with petty malice, her manager made it his personal mission to destroy her professional career out of bitter resentment. Toxic workplace bosses in webtoons are always built so cartoonishly evil. Glad she didn't take his trash behavior lying down. He deliberately excluded her from team meetings and sabotaged her workload, attempting to force her into submission. Creepily placing his hand on her shoulder, he implied that her work life would instantly become effortless if she just yielded to his desires. Gulping down her anger, she refused to compromise her dignity, bearing his mistreatment while secretly planning her ultimate revenge. During those dark, lonely nights, her sole comfort came from reading web novels on her smartphone, falling in love with the tragic hero Adius. Watching Adius bravely overcome every impossible hardship on the digital pages inspired her to keep fighting through her own miserable reality. She was secretly recording audio evidence the entire time. Modern Catherine was an absolute boss move queen. Taking inspiration from her favorite fictional prince, she methodically collected voice recordings and documentary proof on her cell phone to expose her boss's corruption. She presented the overwhelming evidence directly to corporate HR, watching triumphantly as security confronted her disgraced manager in front of the entire office. Reflecting on her past victories, she recognizes that greedy men who try to manipulate defenseless women are identical in every world. High society noblewomen who target the vulnerable with cruel taunts remind her of the vicious bullies she dealt with in her previous life. She really said, I survived corporate Korea. These fantasy nobles don't stand a chance. Talk about peak main character energy. Having defeated arrogant tormentors before, she vows never to bow her head or accept defeat in this new reality. Snapping back to the present moment, Catherine tightens her fingers around the wooden bowstring with lethal focus. An incoming assassin leaps out from the bushes with his blade raised, charging directly toward her exposed position. Hearing Harros yell out in panic from afar, Catherine remains unfazed, tracking her target's movement with ice-cold composure. Releasing the bowstring with flawless technique, her arrow rockets straight through the forest leaves with terrifying speed. Perched high atop a thick tree branch, Catherine carefully aims down at another target while an assassin searches below. This assassin is looking around so confused while she's literally sitting directly above his head like a ninja. The clueless soldier grumbles under his breath, wondering where the young princess could have possibly vanished to in a matter of seconds. Thwack! A fast arrow strikes him right in the back, sending him crashing face first into the dirt with a loud scream. Sitting gracefully against the rough bark, Catherine lowers her weapon and exhales a soft sigh as the threat settles. Looking at her lethal arsenal, she smiles in satisfaction, grateful that she coated every single arrow tip with non-lethal paralyzing poison beforehand. She realizes this immobilized soldier is the perfect specimen to capture and interrogate regarding her Uncle Padelman's hidden schemes. Harros thinks she's just hiding like a weak noble girl while she's out here accumulating a body count of paralyzed guards. She remembers Harros telling her to remain safely hidden while he handled the mercenaries, chuckling at how wrong his assumptions were. Leaping down from the tall branch with nimble grace, she lands lightly on her feet, determined to eliminate every remaining threat herself. Examining her steady hands, she notices with surprise that despite this being her first time shooting human targets, her instincts are remarkably sharp. A dark, shadowy silhouette of the original Catherine chuckles evilly in her mind, hinting that the Villainess's natural ruthlessness is syncing perfectly with her modern soul. Suddenly, a sharp rustle among the nearby foliage catches her attention, making her gasp in sudden alertness. Instantly knocking a fresh arrow onto the string, Catherine spins around with deadly speed, wondering if another enemy has arrived. Wait, who is lurking down in the bushes? Don't tell me Adius tracked her down all the way to this forest ambush. Gazing through the leafy branches, she spots a dark-haired figure crouching low in the bushes, setting up a thrilling, unexpected encounter. Catherine lowers her weapon in utter shock as a tall figure steps through the overgrown bushes right before her eyes. Her mind completely freezes in disbelief as the realization hits her like a bolt of lightning. She stares wide-eyed at the dark-haired prince walking through the high grass, wondering why on earth Adius showed up in this remote forest. Look at this gorgeous cinematic wide shot. The contrast between her dark ball gown and the lush green forest looks absolutely stunning. Standing alone among the wild blossoms, Catherine tries to process the sudden appearance of her web novel crush. Quickly bowing her head with polite nobility, she greets the prince, questioning if someone managed to report the ambush so quickly. Narrowing her eyes in suspicion, she mutters to herself, wondering why a royal prince would personally hurry to a dangerous forest fight. Stepping out from the foliage, Prince Adius glares ahead with sharp blue eyes, carrying a slight fresh scratch along his jawline. The dramatic Korean red text explosion for a minor facial scratch is peak webtoon romance drama. The moment Catherine spots the thin red streak across his face, her mind completely loses all rational logic. Screaming in hyperactive panic, she panics over the tiny cosmetic cut like it's a fatal injury. Latching her hands onto his face with aggressive concern, Catherine screams at the top of her lungs, demanding to know which villain dared touch his gorgeous face. Adius stands completely frozen, his eyes widened in total confusion as his cheeks are forcefully squished together. Her inner fangirl completely took over. She went from cold sniper assassin to possessive fan club president in 0.2 seconds. Glaring with fiery indignation, Catherine fumes over the audacity of anyone ruining his perfect handsome visuals. Panicking internally, she stresses that without immediate medical ointment, that tiny cut could leave a permanent mark on his main character face. Suddenly snapping back to her senses, Catherine blushes intensely as she realizes she's currently cupping the prince's cheeks in public. Adius gazes down at her with an unreadable, ice-cold glare, sending a shiver straight down her spine. Her quick tsundere shift is top-tier comedy. It's not like I care about you or anything, baka. Quickly yanking her hands away, Catherine clears her throat and acts completely unconcerned, scoffing that his health isn't her business anyway. Her delicate fingers slide off his face, breaking the intimate contact as an awkward silence settles over them. Trying to save face, Catherine sarcastically quips that his opponent must have been pretty skilled to give the great prince a scratch. Cursing her big mouth in chibi form, she internally regrets being so harsh to the man she secretly adores. Poor girl is so afraid of being rejected or seen as a monster that she keeps building emotional walls around herself. Lowering her gaze in quiet guilt, Catherine finds herself completely unable to meet his eyes. A gentle gust of wind sweeps through the trees as Catherine winces, panting, terrified that he might look at her with disgust. Adius turns his face away, coldly muttering under his breath that her dramatic behavior is completely ridiculous. Catherine's heart aches at his icy response, feeling the heavy emotional sting of being pushed away by the person she likes. Pushing her personal feelings aside, inhales sharply, Catherine listens as Aedeus stoically announces that the captured attackers will be sent to the government office. Expressing formal gratitude for his intervention, Catherine politely bows before asserting her own authority over the situation. Host reaction. She is not letting the government sweep this under the rug. Duke Elamore's estate is about to run a full black site interrogation. Firmly crossing her arms, Catherine declares that every single prisoner will be transported directly to her family's estate instead. Flashing a sharp, dangerous smile, she reminds him that under imperial law, as the targeted victim, she possesses the sole legal right of interrogation. Aedeus silently studies her bold confidence, recognizing that this young noblewoman is far more cunning than rumors suggested. Closing his eyes with a subtle nod, the prince grants her request without further argument, agreeing to let her handle the captives. Suddenly, a voice shouts out from the nearby trees, interrupting their tense standoff, as Heroes rushes toward them. Turning around in relief, Catherine calls out her butler's name, glad to see him unharmed after the chaotic skirmish. Harrow strides out from the brush, carrying an immobilized enemy wrapped up like luggage, calmly checking if Catherine is all right. Assuring him that she's perfectly fine, Catherine sweats slightly at the sight of her butler dragging a human body without breaking a sweat. Instantly stepping in front of Catherine protectively, Heroes glares hostility at Aetius, demanding to know who this stranger is. Grabbing her butler's sleeve in panic, Catherine hastily explains that this is Prince Aedeus, who arrived to assist after receiving word of the attack. Look at the intense stare-down between Heroes and Aetius. The male lead jealousy aura is suffocating right now. Heroes keeps his gaze fixed on the prince, assessing whether the royal presents a threat to his mistress. Bowing with flawless professional etiquette, Heroes formally introduces himself as the butler of the Elamore family. Turning on his heel without another word, Aedeus coldly takes his leave now that her safety is officially confirmed. Catherine watches his retreating figure disappear into the dense green forest, her heart lingering on his distant behavior. Biting her lip in quiet anxiety, she feels a deep knot of worry in her chest regarding his facial scratch. Chibi Catherine weeping over potential facial scarring is hilarious. She really prioritizes male lead visuals above all else. Internally screaming in panic, flustered, embarrassed, her mind spirals over the thought of Prince Aeetius getting a permanent mark on his handsome face. She cries hysterically in her thoughts, wishing she could chase him down and force apply magic healing ointment onto his cheek. Picking up her bow off the ground, Catherine tells Heroes it's time to head back to the main carriage road. Heroes points at the paralyzed soldier with an arrow sticking out, skeptical tone, asking if Catherine was truly the one who shot him down? Heroes' eyes sparkling with pure simping enthusiasm is so wholesome. He is her #1 fan. Clasping his hands together with glittering anime eyes, Heroes gushes with overwhelming praise, calling her target practice absolutely perfect. Flipping her pink hair with a proud smirking posture, Catherine chuckles off the praise, secretly amused that her modern national athlete archery skills are surprising everyone. Looking over at Heroes warmly, Catherine suddenly realizes that her butler managed to neutralize multiple high-level assassins all on his own. Ooh, Catherine is running a full background check on her own butler. Smart girl never lets her guard down. A dark, shadowy aura surrounds her thoughts as she decides to thoroughly investigate Heroes' past, knowing it's safer to be cautious regardless of his loyalty. Side by side, Catherine leads the way through the secluded forest path while Heroes effortlessly drags the paralyzed assassin behind them. Exiting the overgrown tree line together, the duo makes their way back toward the road, ready to confront the treacherous mastermind behind the ambush. Sunlight filters down through the dense canopy of the ancient forest, casting golden rays over the quiet leaves. The high tree branches sway gently in the breeze, creating a serene atmosphere after that chaotic battle. Further down the forest road, Prince Adius rides his black stallion alongside his aide, who breaks the silence by admitting he had no idea Lady Catherine possessed such incredible skill. Young Prince Adius responds that his aide is underestimating her, adding that she's a genius when it comes to swordsmanship. However, he was unaware of her archery skills. He then adds that the Crown Prince Nicholas would never have broken off the engagement if he'd known that. Look at that dynamic flashback visual! The artist drew her looking like a divine dark fantasy goddess with that bow. Her aide marvels in awe, noting that her swift movements and flawless form were just like those of a master archer trained for war. Adius remains silent as he rides forward, his gaze fixed on the path ahead while a small red scratch sits on his cheek. Noticing the mark, his aide turns to him with concern, asking if His Highness was injured during the clash and if he's doing all right. Clarifying that he's referring to the fresh cut on his face, the aide waits for an explanation while Adius maintains an unreadable expression. Host reaction? Aetius is replaying her dramatic cheek-squishing panic in his head on loop. He secretly loved every second of it. A sudden flashback flashes across his mind, remembering how Catherine frantically cupped his cheeks with pink glowing roses blooming around her flustered face. Slight smirk touches his lips as he looks away, coldly muttering under his breath that it's nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, back on the main road, the mercenary squad finishes securing the bound captives into heavy wooden wagons. The hooded mercenary leader walks alongside Catherine, reporting enthusiastically that every single target has been rounded up for interrogation without a single escapee. This mercenary boss is realizing he almost picked a fight with a criminal mastermind. The sweat drops on his mask say it all. Looking over at her nervously, the leader wonders if she doubted his loyalty earlier, asking what she would have done if his group had rejected her original deal. Catherine flashes a sweet yet terrifying smile, casually replying that she would have made them deeply regret it since she always prepares a backup plan. She reminds him that her pockets are deep enough to house an endless army of gold-hungry mercenaries at a moment's notice. Glancing at the leader with sharp purple eyes, Catherine quips that it would be a shame for his guild to lose out on such a massive payout to someone else. Reaching into her gown, she pulls out a bulging pouch of gold coins and hands it directly to him, announcing it as a separate bonus fee, but just for his prompt work. Cold, hard cash instantly cures all mercenary doubts. Money really makes the webtoon world go round. The mercenary leader catches the heavy bag with wide eyes as Catherine casually strolls past, stating she expects this payment to build a solid foundation of mutual trust. Turning around with a radiant, confident hair flip, Catherine heads back toward her carriage, ready to return home and begin the real interrogation. Deep beneath the Elamore estate, the scene shifts to the dark, damp stone dungeon enclosed by heavy iron bars. Bound securely to a wooden chair, the captured assassin slumps forward, covered in dirt and fresh bruises from his capture. Standing in the dim candlelight, Heros calmly adjusts his necktie, looking down at the prisoner with an ice-cold, predatory gaze. The rhythmic sound of sharp high heels echoes down the stone corridor, signaling the arrival of the estate's true ruler. Heros bows respectfully as Catherine steps into the cell, greeting his lady as she arrives to inspect the captive. Look at her villainous aura in this dark lighting. She looks ready to run a dark fantasy mafia syndicate. Gazing down at the unconscious soldier with a chilly expression, Catherine coldly asks if the prisoner has refused to open his mouth so far. Heros steps closer to her side in the shadows, preparing to report the results of his preliminary questioning. Her heavy velvet dress rustles against the stone floor as the bound assassin trembles violently in terror, sweating profusely under her menacing gaze. Leaning down near her ear, Heros softly mentions that before her arrival, he and the captive merely exchanged a very brief polite greeting. A polite greeting while holding a thick leather whip with a wholesome idol smile? Heros is completely unhinged. Smiling brightly with glittering anime aura, Heros gracefully presents a heavy spiked whip, politely inviting his lady to resume the conversation. In a hilarious chibi panic, the assassin screams in absolute horror, pleading hysterically and asking what kind of terrifying greeting Heros gave him to make him this traumatized.
Catherine stares at the whip in her hands, realizing her butler's terrifying reputation made this interrogation 10 times easier than expected.
Tightening her grip on the leather handle, she adopts a dark, villainous smile, threatening to use her old harsh methods for the first time in a while. The assassin literally begged her not to stain her skin with his filthy blood. The psychological damage Heros dealt is unmatched. Desperately wriggling against his ropes, the captive shrieks that his blood is far too dirty to touch her, while Catherine internally notes that blood blood skincare is totally out of style anyway.
Flashing identical, shadowy, demonic smiles side by side, Catherine and Heroes chuckle menacingly as the broken assassin bursts into tears, crying hysterically that he'll spill every single secret if they just spare his life. A sudden, outraged scream echoes through the dungeon corridor, shattering the dark mood as Catherine shouts in disbelief over the assassin's confession. She isn't mad that they tried to kill her. She's mad that her bounty was so cheap. Her noble ego is completely offended. Screaming in hyperactive chibi fury, Catherine fumes over learning that the mastermind only paid a paltry 1,000 den for her head, while the captive weeps in the background, pleading for mercy. Narrowing her eyes with dangerous conviction, Catherine quickly composes herself as her sharp mind starts calculating her next legal move. Stepping closer to the trembling captive, she asks in a strict, authoritative tone whether he's willing to repeat that exact testimony before an imperial court judge. Stunned by her request, the assassin stammers in shock, prompting Catherine to confirm that she fully intends to file official high treason charges against Count Paddleman Ellamore. Threatening to turn his skin into a luxury designer handbag if he refuses? She is the ultimate villainous queen. When the captive hesitates out of fear for his life, Catherine flashes a sweet, sadistic grin, casually warning that if he refuses, his high-quality skin would still make a fine leather bag. Crying hysterical anime tears in a chibi state, the terrified assassin instantly surrenders, frantically agreeing to testify in court to save his own skin. The scene transitions to the sunlit upper hallways of the Ellamore mansion, lined with luxurious red carpets and gold-trimmed decor. Gliding down the hallway in a magnificent crimson ball gown, Catherine asks Heroes for an official report on the total casualties and damages from the forest attack. Heroes calmly reports that 2 guards were injured while 2 others cowardly fled the scene, prompting Catherine to order full medical financial support for the brave wounded soldiers. Host reaction? Generous medical coverage for loyal guards and immediate termination for cowards? Now that is top-tier management. With a sharp glance over her shoulder, Catherine strictly commands the immediate firing of the guards who ran away, making it clear she won't tolerate cowardice in her household. Approaching them in the grand corridor, a headmaid bows respectfully and informs Catherine that several distant relatives visited the estate while she was away. Pausing in her tracks, Catherine recalls the assassin's confession about other collateral family members backing Count Padelman, demanding details. The maid nervously explains that fortunately, all those greedy relatives gave up waiting and left the mansion earlier that afternoon. Those vultures thought she was going to die in the woods so they could split her inheritance. They are in for a brutal surprise. Catherine scoffs in disgust, realizing those vultures showed up prematurely, thinking the mansion was already theirs after her planned assassination. Flipping her pink hair with cold, supreme confidence, Catherine assures her maid not to worry, declaring that before those traitors can touch her estate, she'll have them all kneeling at her feet. The dark, mysterious smirk playing on her lips, Catherine coolly adds that the captured assassins currently down in her dungeon won't be staying much longer either. Catherine flashes a dazzling, radiant smile in her gorgeous dress, stepping out into the sunlight after dealing with her initial enemies. Her maid smiles brightly in complete relief, delighted to see her mistress safe and completely back in full control of the household. Look at how fast the conspirators are crumbling. The table slam sound says everything. Meanwhile, in a plush conference hall, a furious noble slams his hands on the table, screaming at Count Paddleman for lying about the target being just an easy, defenseless girl. Backing away in a sweat, Padelman tries to make excuses while the outraged relatives point fingers, shouting that they trusted him with their private soldiers and demanding to know how he intends to take full responsibility. Sweating bullets under their glares, Padelman internally fumes, cursing that he never anticipated his assassination plot falling apart this badly. Staring into space as Catherine's dark silhouette looms over his mind, Paddleman wonders how she wiped out so many trained hitmen, contemptuous, stubbornly believing that brat lacks the brain power to counter such a trap. Classic villain denial. He'd rather construct a giant conspiracy theory than admit Catherine totally outplayed him. Narrowing his eyes in deep suspicion, Padelman reaches the only logical conclusion left in his crooked mind. Turning to the panicked group, Padelman falsely claims that someone among them must have betrayed the alliance, taking a massive bribe from Catherine to leak all their movement details. Surrounding himself with a dark, sinister aura, Padelman insists that a secret mole is the only possible explanation for how she survived such a brutal bloodbath. Horrified by the accusation, a red-haired noble slams his hands down, shouting furiously that Padelman is just trying to shift all the blame onto everyone else. Paranoia is spreading like wildfire. Catherine didn't even need to touch them. They're
devouring each other alive. The room instantly erupts into chaos as the paranoid nobles start turning on each other, shouting and demanding to know who the traitor among them actually is. Smirking under his breath while watching the infighting, Paddleman arrogantly dismisses them as a useless mob, deciding it's best to quietly pull out of the alliance before things escalate further. Just as Padelman tries to calm him down, a panicked noble bursts into the room, announcing that the ducal house sent word granting total immunity to the first 10 people who surrender and beg for forgiveness. The room freezes as the nobles realize time is running out, murmuring nervously among themselves that others have already gone, and they need to reach Catherine's mansion as fast as humanly possible. A limited-time mercy deal? Catherine literally turned her revenge into a Black Friday doorbuster race. Someone suddenly screams in panic, "I'm going first," as absolute chaos breaks loose in the room. Tripping over chairs and shoving each other aside, the terrified nobles sprint toward the exit, desperately trying to beat each other to the ducal estate before the top 10 spots fill up. Left behind in a cloud of dust, Paddleman desperately waves his arms, shouting for everyone to stop pushing, fuming in utter embarrassment that grown lords are letting themselves get manipulated by a mere child. Standing alone in the completely empty, overturned meeting room, Paddleman stares at the fallen chairs in disbelief, suddenly recalling the strange warning his own daughter gave him earlier. In a frantic flashback, his daughter Lucia grabs his vest in sheer panic, desperately warning him that Catherine has completely changed into a terrifyingly different person. Now he realizes he ignored his daughter's warning, and now his entire coalition is heading straight for Catherine's trap. Looking out the sunset window, Paddleman grimly realizes too late that his daughter was telling the absolute truth all along. Meanwhile, over at the Imperial Administration Office, an aide stands before Adius's desk, delivering an official intelligence report regarding the ambush on Lady Elamore. Handing over a confidential file, the aide confirms that Catherine's uncle, Count Paddleman, orchestrated the entire attack solely to steal her massive inheritance. Adius listens silently with an intense gaze as his aide explains that while several branch family members and Emperor faction nobles were eyeing her fortune, Paddleman was simply the first to strike. Adjusting his collar, Adius calmly instructs his assistant to closely monitor every major noble tied to the Emperor's political faction to anticipate their next move. Rising from his desk with a heavy sigh, Adius bids his aide a quiet evening, preparing to wrap up his duties for the day. Look at him gazing at the sunset. He acts cold on the outside, but his head is completely filled with thoughts of Catherine. Stepping out into the golden sunset glow, Odysseus gazes toward the horizon, unable to stop thinking about the deadly threats surrounding Catherine's inheritance. Contemplating deeply under his breath, Odysseus wonders why he finds himself caring so intensely about Catherine's safety, despite her belonging to the hated Elamore bloodline. Walking down the quiet residential corridor, he asks himself if he sympathizes with her simply because her isolated struggle mirrors his own painful past. Approaching his private quarters, Adius notices a neat white envelope pinned to his front door, bearing a distinct crimson wax seal. Pausing on his tracks, Atheus reaches out and takes the mysterious letter. Gasps, immediately recognizing the official crest stamped on the wax. Is that a letter directly from Catherine? His heart definitely skipped a beat right there. Examining the shiny red seal close up, Adius realizes the letter was sent directly from the Elamore estate. His expression instantly darkens as cold annoyance replaces his soft mood, feeling ridiculous for wasting his sympathy on someone like her. Crumpling the paper tightly in his fist, Adius scowls fiercely into the sunset, suspecting Catherine is already plotting her next self-serving scheme. Cut back to Catherine riding inside her luxurious carriage, where she pouts in a hilarious chibi state while inspecting Adius's floating game status bar displaying a 90% HP level. Fuming as she reviews his health bar drop, Catherine complains hyperactively that despite sending massive amounts of relief food to the poorhouse, his overall HP is still hovering at half. She is managing his health like a dedicated RPG player grinding affection points. Her dramatic crying face is priceless. Shedding dramatic anime tears, Catherine wails in frustration, wondering what insane quest she needs to complete next just to boost his favorability bar further. Her dramatic inner monologue is interrupted as the carriage driver announces through the window that they have finally arrived at the Imperial Palace gates. Composing herself instantly, Catherine steps down from the carriage onto the paved stone courtyard, radiating supreme elegance as her butler follows close behind. Gliding down the grand palace hallway in a magnificent maroon ball gown, Catherine reflects on how the immense power of the Elamore Duchy was built entirely by her late father. She notes that every noble courtier is watching her closely, openly doubting whether an arrogant and spoiled heiress can protect such a massive empire on her own.
Everyone expects her to break, but they have no idea. They're dealing with a veteran player who knows every cheat code in the book. Looking at the soaring palace towers, Catherine knows the entire high society regards her precarious duchy as easy prey waiting to be carved up. Recalling a visual memory of her desperate relatives waiving business contracts while begging for mercy, Catherine chuckles softly, noting that while she easily crushed the first wave of greedy vultures, future battles won't be this simple. Remembering Adius standing on the battle line, Catherine reaffirms her goal. To ensure his future revolution succeeds, she must protect every single asset left in her inheritance. Stepping beneath the bright palace spotlight, Catherine narrows her eyes with absolute determination, resolving to secure direct backing from the Emperor himself to protect her legacy. Look at that epic throne room entrance! The royal herald shouting her name makes her look like total royalty. The massive gold-trimmed doors swing wide open as the royal herald announces the official arrival of Lady Elamore to the imperial throne room. Seated high upon his golden throne, flanked by royal guards, the emperor smiles down with a sharp, calculating glint, asking what urgent business brings the young lady to request an audience. Catherine performs a flawless royal curtsy, politely offering her greetings to the supreme leader of the Oswell Empire, while the emperor inwardly glares, wondering if she uncovered something from her father's burned study. Keeping a completely calm, unbothered expression, Catherine internally scoffs, thinking that even if she possessed the secret revolutionary list, she'd never hand it over to that greedy old tyrant. The emperor stroking his fur collar with a thoughtful gaze, waiting to hear what offer she brought to the royal court. Presenting an official report document, Catherine gracefully curtsies again, announcing that she wishes to offer the rich restitution of the Presla territory to the throne, prompting the emperor's guard to hand over the resource assessment file. Bowing gracefully before the throne, Catherine presents an official report document explaining that recent surveys confirm a massive spike in buried resource deposits within the Presla territory. She softly adds that she wishes to return the land directly to the crown to assist in rebuilding the empire's grand economy. Resting on his opulent golden throne, the emperor stares down with a calculating glint, while Catherine politely reminds him that it's only a matter of time before word spreads throughout high society regarding the vast wealth hidden beneath those frozen fields. The emperor slowly flips through the detailed document, inspecting the resource metrics with an intensely sharp gaze. Look at her slyly checking his face. She's running rings around the ruler of the entire empire. Sneaking a quick glance upward, Catherine thinks to herself that while the emperor remains suspicious of her true motives, the resource gain is simply too vast for him to refuse. A dark, satisfied smirk glides across the emperor's face as he hums softly, promising to remember the unwavering loyalty of House Elamore. Forming a deep curtsy, Catherine humbly responds that it's nothing at all, declaring that she would do anything for His Majesty and the future of the empire, while her inner chibi state erupts into frantic victory cheers. Flashing a serene front while leaving the throne room, Catherine internally chuckles, knowing that keeping the frozen Presla territory was completely useless to her anyway. Because the land technically belonged to the imperial crown and was only managed by Elamore, she couldn't even sell it off for immediate cash. Visualizing the glowing blue crystal caverns deep inside the icy mines, she acknowledges that while those raw deposits are worth billions, extracting them is a total nightmare. Imagining literal mountains of gold coins, she calculates that the terrain is so treacherous and frozen that development costs alone would bankrupt almost any noble house. That greedy smile on the emperor's face says it all. He's walking right into her master plan. Glancing over her shoulder at the monarch, Catherine knows the greedy tyrant won't be able to ignore the massive potential profit, meaning he will force the imperial court to fund the development of the frozen lands at all costs. Visualizing ranks of heavily armored imperial knights, Catherine realizes that pouring endless treasury funds into mine development will drastically cut the royal army's military budget, providing the revolutionary forces with the ultimate tactical advantage to breach the palace when the time comes. The emperor suddenly lowers the folder, locking his fierce eyes onto her with heavy suspicion. A heavy aura fills the hall as the emperor chillingly asks what made her suddenly decide to surrender the land, mocking that had she developed it himself, her duchy could have hoarded every last coin. Instantly switching on her ultra-radiant innocent maiden persona, Catherine clasps her hands together with a dazzling aura, softly pleading for His Majesty to view her humble actions with gentle favor. Her fake sweet smile is literally an Olympic-level act. Look at her cheapy self screaming in the corner. Bursting into a hearty chuckle, the emperor waves off his suspicion, amused that the young heiress was still fretful over his earlier questioning. Meanwhile, Catherine's inner chibi explodes in pure outrage, screaming that the greedy old man literally tried to squeeze the Revolutionary Army list out of her the second she walked in. Dismissing her with a casual flick of his hand, the Emperor permits her to take her leave. Catherine offers a flawless curtsy, while her furious inner chibi brutally throws up a middle finger, growling to never see his face ever again. Stepping out of the grand audience chamber, Catherine stretches her arms high overhead with a blissful sigh, cheered that today's terrifying diplomatic mission was officially a resounding success. Suddenly, a massive shadow looms directly over her path. A deep, chilling voice echoes through the empty marble corridor, calling out her full name, Catherine Ellimore. Catherine freezes in place, gasping, her eyes widening in immediate surprise as she recognizes the unmistakable dark tone. Standing tall beneath the glowing hallway chandeliers, Adius glares down at her with an intensely stern and unreadable expression. Oh boy, the tension in this hallway just hit boiling point. He looks absolutely lethal. Lowering her head into a respectful bow, Catherine greets him formally as His Highness, while internally panicking over running into Adi at such an unscripted time. Stepping closer, Atheus glares at her with cold frustration, sharply demanding to know why she continually goes out of her way to provoke him. And her text overlay reflects her deep dread. Dramatic whisper, "Since I sent him that letter, I expected this." But looking up into his dark blue eyes, Catherine realizes with a heavy chest that he isn't just annoyed, he is genuinely furious with her. Putting on a calm, polite facade, Catherine tilts her head with an easy smile, inquiring why she would ever make an effort to provoke His Highness. Her innocence is so believable. A glowing letter pop-up displays the message she pinned to his door. Since we are making restitution of the Presla lands, please collect the late Empress's mementos before her villa is torn down. Catherine smoothly defends herself, stating she was merely fulfilling her duties as a loyal subject and advising him not to jump to harsh conclusions. Turning his face away in sharp anger, Aetius reminds her that Presla was the sacred territory managed by his late mother, harshly questioning if the Lady of Ellimore is ignorant of the high treason laws surrounding royalty's personal property. She didn't back down for a single second. That sinister look on her face is pure high-stakes poker. Catherine's eyes narrow as she drops her sweet facade, delivering a razor-sharp warning that if he doesn't personally retrieve his mother's belongings right now, the greedy emperor will demolish the entire villa himself. Sweeping her dark maroon gown aside, Catherine bows curtly and walks right past him without waiting for an answer. Aetius stands frozen in the hallway, watching her back disappear down the dimly lit royal corridor. A bittersweet flashback memory shows the sun setting over the late empress's lush rose gardens. Ever since Aetius lost his beloved mother, he had refused to ever step foot near that private villa again. Looking upon the quiet garden gazebo under the bright full moon, the memory notes that he deliberately stayed away out of fear that confronting his grief would expose his inner weakness to his enemies. Aetius realizes that receiving a blunt, cold warning about the villa's destruction directly from Catherine was guaranteed to trigger a fierce reaction within his guarded heart. Strolling through the dark palace gardens beneath the glowing moon, Catherine tightly clutches her gown, reminding herself that she must force Aetius to view her as an unforgivable enemy. She's deliberately making him hate her just to protect him from behind the scenes. My heart is breaking for her. Looking back over her shoulder into the night breeze, Catherine sighs sorrowfully, knowing that if she lets her guard down and reveals her genuine affection, it'll ultimately destroy both of them. Shaking off her tragic thoughts, Catherine flashes a bright, determined smile, playfully asking herself what it matters if he grows to hate her. In a super cute chibi panel, she nods vigorously, declaring that simply saving her favorite character's life is more than enough reward for her, plus surviving her own death flags. Pumping her fist into the air, she vows to stay strong for Eti's sake no matter what. Next transition reads, and the next day, Catherine wakes up to a sudden puzzling occurrence, murmuring in confusion. What is this? Catherine's eyes pop open in absolute horror as a glowing system status screen floats before her face, displaying a completely drained bar labeled Drink Iced THP empty. Wait, his health bar completely flatlined from drinking iced tea? What kind of toxic boba did he drink? Shedding dramatic anime tears while gripping her face in shock, Catherine screams in total panic, demanding to know why AT's affection hearts and health points suddenly plummeted to rock bottom. Meanwhile, dark shadows envelop the royal palace as a secretive event unfolds during the late hours of the night. Dramatic text flashes across the screen. The night Catherine visited the Imperial Palace, revealing the dangerous hidden plot that took place right under her nose. Inside his private dining hall, the Emperor is swirling a glass of dark red wine, sinisterly pondering to himself whether a certain guest will dare refuse the special drink he personally prepared. Sitting across the grand banquet table, Adius sits in total silence, staring down at his glass with a cold, guarded expression. Unaware of the sinister trap, Adius swirls his wineglass before raising it to his lips, swallowing a massive gulp of the potent royal liquor. Setting the empty glass down onto the table, Ateus calmly rises, announcing that he feels out of place at the feast and wishes to take his leave early. The Emperor narrows his eyes in annoyance, letting out a sharp click of his tongue before curtly permitting the prince to depart. Walking out through the towering glass doors of the banquet hall, Adius steps out into the cool, silent corridor. He's overthinking everything. He doesn't realize he was literally poisoned right at that dinner table. Walking down the dimly lit hallway, Adius questions his own turbulent emotions, wondering why he felt so deeply betrayed by Catherine when there was no reason for him to project his past trauma onto her. Suddenly, an agonizing burn flares inside his chest. Gripping his shirt in agony, Atheus realizes the strong drink was laced, just as a hooded assassin drops silently from the ceiling with a lethal dagger raised high. Driven by pure survival instinct, Atheus gasps in shock, and instantly reaches for his blade, unsheathing his sword in a split second as the masked killer lunges directly for his throat. Sparks fly in the pitch-black corridor as steel clashes against steel. Adius barely blocks the lethal ambush. Standing his ground on the polished marble floor, Adius locks eyes with the cloaked intruder who wields a crimson-stained blade. The assassin slinks forward like a ghost through the shadows, his gaze locked onto the prince with cold, calculating intent. The Emperor literally served him spiked liquor and then dispatched a hitman. Talk about zero chill from his own uncle. Adius's vision blurs as the heavy alcohol paralyzes his limbs. He bitterly curses his rotten luck, realizing the Emperor arranged this ambush after plying him with drink. Sweat beads down Adius's face while his head throbs with overwhelming nausea, furious that his ruthless uncle resorted to such underhanded methods. Driven by sheer grit, Adius swings his longsword, but his impaired reflexes cause him to miss, letting the rogue slice through his coat sleeve. Seeing that he failed the instant kill, the wounded assailant leaps backward and dashes down the grand hallway, leaving a trail of dripping red drops behind. Bro is hanging on by a literal thread. He needs immediate medical backup before he passes right there. Staggering weakly under the influence of the creeping toxin, Ateus tightly clutches his bleeding arm, struggling just to stay conscious. As his panicked attendant rushes toward him, shouting in sheer panic, Ateus's knees buckle beneath him, his fading thoughts crying out that he cannot succumb here. Meanwhile, back under the bright blue morning sky at the Elmore estate, Catherine stares out her window in utter bewilderment. While taking a delicate sip of warm tea, Catherine's inner chibi loses her mind, screaming in absolute horror as Addie's affection hearts suddenly plummet straight down to 3. Her internal panic versus her exterior calm tea-drinking pose is top-tier comedy. That's a true noble lady right there. Looking over her glowing game system screen, Catherine raises a brow in deep puzzle, knowing the male lead was never supposed to suffer a sudden health crash at this point in the original storyline. Placing her teacup back onto the saucer with a soft clatter, Catherine realizes that surviving these chaotic plot twists alone is completely impossible without a trustworthy ally. A smooth stream of hot tea fills the cup as she ponders finding an ally whose loyalty is 100% unconditional. She glances up at Heroes, who stands beside her with his usual polished posture and a gentle, devoted smile. Heroes is way too competent to just be a random background butler. Something tells me this guy has a massive backstory hidden. Her internal chibi narrows her eyes with heavy suspicion, questioning whether her capable head butler can truly be trusted with her deepest secrets. After all, a man with such flawless skills and deadly combat reflexes could never just be a nameless extra who never showed up in the original novel. Though it's clear he's concealing a secret past, he has proven to be her most loyal defender through thick and thin. Deciding that now is the time to uncover his true identity, Catherine resolves to confront him directly. Direct hit! She put him right on the spot with that signature Catherine confidence. Crossing her arms while leaning back against the plush velvet sofa, Catherine boldly looks up and asks Heros if he wants to play a game of trading secrets. Flabbergasted by her sudden proposal, Heros blinks in confusion while Catherine playfully questions if he doesn't trust his own mistress. Shaking his head frantically and waving his gloved hands in total shock, Heros stammers that he would never dare disbelieve her. Smirking at his adorable reaction, Catherine Catherine offers to take the lead and share her own confession first. Look at his worried face. Harrows cares about her safety more than anything else. She reminds him that in exchange, he must reveal a secret of equal value, leaving the poor butler trembling in quiet apprehension. Taking a deep breath, Catherine puts on a remarkably serious expression, preparing to drop a bombshell statement. She declares with utter conviction that every single risky move she has pulled recently was entirely for the sake of Prince Adius. Harrows gasps in utter disbelief. Looking deeply concerned for her safety, Harrows sharply inquires why she would ever put herself in such extreme danger for the second prince.
She casually blamed the author. Technically zero lies detected, but Heros is out here thinking a dark sorcerer cursed her. A subtle, enigmatic smirk touches Catherine's lips as she begins to explain the unbelievable truth.
Flipping her vibrant pink curls with dramatic flair, Catherine sets up her ultimate explanation with supreme confidence.
She lies smoothly by claiming her life is bound to Adius by an inescapable magical soul curse, meaning if the prince dies, her own life instantly forfeits too.
Heros stands frozen, wondering if it's a soul contract.
Harrows shouts in fierce rage, demanding to know what monster dared bind her life to another. Catherine dryly mutters that the author is responsible before demanding that he fulfill his end of the bargain.
Jackpot! She just scored direct access to the entire revolutionary mercenary roster? Talk about a massive win! Leaning closer with an expectant twinkle in her eyes, Catherine prompts him to open up about his past. She looks him straight in the eyes and firmly asks the million-dollar question, who is he really? Harrows closes his eyes with a warm, tender blush, causing Catherine's inner cheapie to panic in total embarrassment over his surprisingly romantic aura. Dropping gracefully onto one knee before her, Harrows confesses that he was once a member of the infamous underground faction known as the Scavengers. Catherine's eyes widen as she connects the dots, realizing that his past ties to the Scavengers mean he knows every secret operative in the rebel network. Holding her hands gently in his gloved fingers, Heroes looks up at his young mistress with unfaltering devotion. He softly explains that while he initially joined her household for personal reasons, staying by her side today is entirely out of his own genuine free will. Bro pulled out a whole knife to prove his loyalty? This guy's devotion is off the charts dramatic. He pledges that she is the first person who ever cared to truly understand who he is as an individual and what he truly desires. Tightly holding her delicate palm within his hands, Heros assures her that if his words aren't enough to earn her faith, he will prove it through action. Suddenly unsheathing a gleaming dagger from inside his coat sleeve, he offers the weapon to her, declaring she may take his life right here if she ever doubts him. Offering the sharp edge toward himself with a blissful smile, he places his very existence entirely into her hands. Haha, now that is what I call top-tier loyalty. With Harrows completely on her team, nobody can touch her. Catherine's inner chibi screams in utter chaos, wondering where on earth he was hiding a massive combat knife inside his formal suit. Gently taking the dagger away from him, Catherine offers a soft, genuine smile, relieved to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Heroes is truly her ultimate ally. The heavy tension dissolves as the master and servant share a quiet moment of absolute mutual trust inside the sunlit parlor. When Catherine asks if he will really fulfill any order she gives, Heroes answers without a second thought that he will grant whatever she desires. Groans. That very night, under the deep blue sky, a covert operation begins at Prince Adius's secret residence. Deep inside his darkened bedchamber, Atius lies completely unconscious, his bare chest wrapped in bloodied medical bandages following his near-fatal encounter with the assassin. Poisoned Prince groans softly in pain, feverish sweat dripping down his brows, the residual toxin burns through his veins. Suddenly, a stealthy figure dressed in a dark hooded cloak slips silently through the open window curtains, revealing vibrant pink locks and determined purple eyes as Catherine arrives to save her favorite character. Rewinding back to a few days ago at the majestic Ellamore Mansion, the sun shines brightly over the grand estate as a high-stakes investigation gets underway. Harrow steps smoothly through the wooden doors of the study, where Catherine turns around with an anxious expression, demanding to know if he found any news regarding Prince Adius. Nodding gravely with a somber look, Harrows confirms the grim truth. The prince completely failed to report to his imperial government office today.
She already knows the plot is derailed, but seeing her favorite character go off-grid gives her total anxiety. Relatable fan behavior right here. Crossing her arms tight, Catherine mutters under her breath that she has an awful feeling about this, desperately wondering if there's any possible way to check on his status. Sensing her intense concern, Hero steps forward with unwavering resolve, promising her that he will uncover the prince's whereabouts by tomorrow morning without fail. Catherine blinks in surprise, softly calling out his name as she realizes just how deeply committed her butler is to her every command. Cut to the next morning inside her private study, where Harros delivers the shocking intelligence report he managed to gather overnight. Look at him lying there like a tragic sleeping beauty. The artist went crazy with the dramatic lighting on this scene. Harros reveals the dire situation. Adius is currently lying unconscious in his bedchamber, critically wounded and unable to wake up. The sinister poison circulating through his veins completely paralyzes his nervous system, gasping, slowly cutting off his breathing hour by hour. So the royal physician treating the second prince admitted to Harris in absolute secret that his condition is rapidly worsening. With her mind spiraling in shock, gasping, Catherine bites her thumb nervously, horrified to learn that Adius was targeted with an incurable lethal poison. Harros genuinely believes her fake soul curse lie. He thinks if Adius kicks the bucket, his precious mistress perishes too. Harros panics in deep distress, asking if she'll be in grave danger too if the prince passes away, practically begging her to let him handle it. Assuring him that she has everything under control, Catherine suddenly perks up with a bright grin, announcing that she just thought of the ultimate plan. She smirks playfully at her bewildered butler, telling him that he should already know what she's planning if he thinks about it carefully. Under the cover of pitch-black darkness, Harros offers to infiltrate the prince's residence himself, but Catherine firmly declines as she sneaks across the rooftop. Slipping quietly through the heavy velvet curtains into Adius's silent bedchamber, Catherine whispers in relief that she has finally arrived to save him. Look at her, standing over him like a guardian angel. This whole rescue mission is giving pure romantic fantasy peak drama. She gazes down at Adius, who lies motionless under the white sheets, his pale skin illuminated by the soft moonlight. Catherine looks down at his weak, unconscious form and softly calls out his nickname with a heavy heart. Her eyes burn with sudden, terrifying fury, vowing to personally hunt down and crush whichever ruthless villain dared poison her favorite lead. Even when he's literally dying, bro still looks like a cover model. You can't blame Catherine for losing her composure for a second. She adjusts her dark hood, softly confessing to herself that while she never gets tired of staring at his face, seeing him like this breaks her heart. Clasping her gloved hands over her chest, she tries to steady her racing pulse as she prepares to administer the remedy. Suddenly, her inner chibi goes completely crazy, blushing furiously as Adius practically radiates a sparkling male lead aura, even while totally unconscious. Staring at his long eyelashes and handsome jawline, Catherine screams internally in absolute fangirl chaos. Girl, get it together! You came here on a medical rescue mission, not a visual appreciation tour. Slapping her cheek softly to regain her focus, she reminds herself that this is a life-or-death emergency and pulls out the remedy. Reaching beneath her dark cloak, she produces a shimmering glass vial sealed with a radiant crystal stopper. She recalls how she managed to acquire this rare elixir using the medicine distribution rights she seized from her greedy relatives. Legend speaks of an ancient angel who fell deeply in love with a mortal man, wept bitter tears when he was poisoned, and cured his affliction. The legendary cure distilled from those miraculous tears became known throughout the realm as the Sacred Angel's Tears. She remembers a shady medicine merchant hyping up the rare potion to her months ago, which she almost dismissed as a silly fairy tale. Talk about crazy foreshadowing. Acquiring those business rights earlier accidentally gave her the literal cheat code antidote. Holding the glowing blue flask tightly in her hand, Catherine knows this legendary potion is Atias's one and only hope of survival. Gently leaning over his bandaged chest, she carefully pours the glowing blue liquid between his parted lips. Adius unconsciously swallows the magical elixir, allowing the powerful antidote to flow into his bloodstream. Brushing a soft strand of hair from his brow, Catherine tenderly caresses his cheek, watching over him as the potion takes effect. She whispers a soft prayer against his ear, sincerely hoping that he will make a swift and full recovery. Suddenly, Adius's eyelashes flutter as a surge of vital energy ripples through his body. Her heart almost jumped right out of her chest. That sudden jump scare almost exposed her stealth mission.
Panicking in sheer terror, Catherine yanks her dark hood low over her eyes, horrified by how overwhelmingly handsome he looks even when waking up. Deciding it's time to make a quick exit before he fully regains consciousness, Catherine turns to flee, only for a strong hand to grab her wrist in a tight grip. Gasping in shock, Catherine turns around as Edea sits straight up in bed, staring directly into her vibrant purple eyes with a sharp gaze. Recognizing those iconic eyes immediately, Atias realizes who stands before him while Catherine panics internally over how ridiculously fast the antidote worked. The potion worked too well. Bro went from death's door to instant grappling mode in 0.5 seconds flat. Terrified of exposing her true identity, Catherine covers her face in sheer panic, panting, desperate to break free from his grasp. Overcome by a sudden wave of dizziness from the lingering poison purging his system, Edea stumbles forward, falling toward her. Swiftly taking advantage of his temporary imbalance, Catherine breaks his grip and leaps backward through the open window frame. Reaching out into the cold night air as she vanishes into the darkness, Edeas weakly calls out for her to stop. With a sudden dramatic flash of light, Edeas bolts straight up in his bed under the bright morning sun. He woke up thinking it was all a fever dream, but his body being totally cured proves otherwise. Clutching his bandaged shoulder in deep bewilderment, Edeas groans softly, wondering just how long he was lying unconscious in bed. He sits in quiet reflection, struggling to make sense of the chaotic visions that flooded his mind while he was trapped in a coma. He recalls the terrifying nightmares of raging infernos and endless bloodshed that tormented his mind while the poison burned inside him. Images of a blood-stained imperial crown burning amidst crimson flames flashed repeatedly through his unconscious state. But amongst all those horrifying nightmares, there was one vivid memory that felt impossibly real. A hooded figure with striking purple eyes holding him tight. Looking down at his healed hands bathed in morning sunlight, Edeas softly mutters her name, realizing beyond a doubt that Catherine Ellimore was the one who saved his life. Morning dawns over the luxurious estate where Catherine rests peacefully after her secret late-night stealth rescue. Sitting up in her plush bed, Catherine checks her floating system screen, excitedly thrilled to discover that Atias' health is completely restored and his affection points shot up to 60. Chibi Catherine crosses her arms in deep thought, wondering if the prince actually remembered a face or if he was too delirious from the poison to recognize a savior. Stretching her arms wide with a happy sigh, she smiles in total relief knowing her favorite character is out of danger. Look at her getting dressed like an absolute final boss preparing for war. She didn't just save the prince, she's about to collect some heads. Her maids finish styling her hair while Catherine realizes it's about time her corrupt uncle made his next move. Cutting into a delicious steak at the dining table, heavy breathing, she calmly waits for the trap she set to spring. Heroes quietly enters her private study, holding a stack of official correspondence. Handing over a sealed letter, Heroes informs her that Count Padelmon Ellimore has officially sent an invitation, prompting Catherine to smile knowingly. That devious pink smile right there? Uncle Padelmon has no idea he's walking straight into a masterfully crafted trap. Radiating confidence among blooming flowers, Catherine prepares her counterattack against her greedy relative. Orders are dispatched to her secret operative network, instructing everyone to prepare for a full-scale raid on Padelmon Ellimore's mansion. The double doors of the mansion study burst open with a loud slam as an infuriated man yells Catherine's name at the top of his lungs. Catherine ignores his rage, taking a slow, calm sip from her porcelain teacup. The level of unbothered audacity here is legendary. She's literally sipping tea in his own house like she owns the place. Looking up with a playful smirk, Catherine points out that he's fashionably late considering he was the one who invited her over in the first place. Count Padelmon marches into the room with terrified maids trembling behind him. Padelmon stomps his foot in annoyance, scolding her for drinking tea before the elder touches the tea set, while muttering angrily about who served her without permission. Catherine smirks softly, letting him know she prepared the tea herself, so he shouldn't go around blaming the innocent servants. Padelmon's smug, beard-stroking face is so punchable. He thinks he still holds all the cards in this family feud. Padelmon scowls, adjusting his necktie while preparing to deliver a self-righteous lecture. Padelmon reminisces about watching her grow up from a tiny girl, boasting to himself that putting a brat like her in her place should be child's play. Shaking his finger in moral superiority, he shouts that as family elder, he can't sit back while she annuls her engagement and squanders the Ellimore wealth. His boisterous voice echoes through the study as he demands to know how anyone expects him to just sit by and watch her ruin their name. She is literally laughing in his face. You can see the villain's soul leaving his body from her utter lack of respect.
Catherine chuckles under her breath, repeating his words back to him with a dangerous glint in her eyes. Her gaze turns deadly cold, directly asking her uncle if his inability to sit back is the real reason he tried to murder her. Delman freezes in absolute terror, gasp, stuttering hysterically as he yells, asking where on earth she heard such complete nonsense. Crossing his arms tight, he tries to maintain his composure, telling himself there's no way she actually possesses real proof. Bro is acting like a saint while his maid pours green tea. The hypocrisy is reaching historical highs right now. But Delmon sighs dramatically, claiming his heart is heavy from having to teach an ignorant child how the real world works. Maid carefully places a steaming cup of green talus tea on the table, praising its ability to calm the mind and body. Catherine gazes silently at the green liquid, telling her uncle that they should both calm down and have a civil conversation. Looking down at the teacup, Catherine mentally ridicules him for resorting to such a ridiculously amateurish trick. Padelman grins slyly, sarcastically, pretending to be a caring uncle who only ever worries about her well-being. Splash! Without warning, Catherine hurls the entire cup of hot green tea right into Padelman's face. She actually threw the tea at his face. Absolute savage queen behavior right here. Padelman stands frozen with green tea dripping off his nose while the poor maid behind him gasps in utter horror. Veins bulge on Padelman's forehead as he slams his desk, screaming that there is a limit to her unbelievable insolence. Catherine shrugs her shoulders nonchalantly, putting her hands up in fake innocence. Chibi Catherine giggles mischievously while Padelman loses his entire mind, screaming at her like an unhinged lunatic. Reaching smoothly into her leather handbag, Catherine softly remarks that she only came today for one specific reason. She called his internal thoughts transparent to his face. The disrespect level is over 9,000. She smirks coldly, telling him it's highly entertaining to watch him squirm when his motives are as clear as day. She pulls out a glowing glass flask, exposing the exact lethal poison he tried to mix into her tea. Flashback images recall his insidious scheme, poisoning her so he could wipe out his debts to her father and seize the rest of her inheritance. Catherine carefully pours the poisoned teapot contents directly into her glass vial, declaring she'll be taking this flawless evidence with her. Padelman recoils in shock, gasp, as she seals the glass stopper tight, realizing she trapped him completely. Enraged beyond reason, Padelman points his trembling finger, screaming at her to give it back. Harrow stepping in front of her like a human shield? The loyal butler trope never fails to deliver maximum hype. Harrows instantly steps in front of Catherine, blocking her uncle with an intimidating, stone-cold stare. Padelman screams for his armed guards to kill the butler as two knights charge forward with drawn blades. Bam! Heroes delivers a crushing kick to the first guard's chest, followed instantly by a devastating punch to the second knight's jaw. Within seconds, both guards are lying unconscious in a pool of blood while Padelman panics, wondering what kind of monster he's dealing with. Padelman spins around frantically, yelling to find out where the rest of his security detail went. He thought he had an army waiting outside, but they're all taking a nap on the hallway floor. Through the open archway, every single one of his personal guards lies knocked out cold in a pile. Sweat pours down Padelman's face as he realizes Catherine orchestrated this entire raid from the very beginning. A cute flashback reveals Catherine happily waving out her window to her hired scavengers, who gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up before wiping out the guards. Catherine looks down on her trembling uncle with a chilling gaze, while he shrieks in desperate fury, helpless against her total victory. With her corrupt uncle slumping back into his chair in utter defeat, Catherine gazes down at him with an icy, triumphant smile, knowing her victory over the estate is absolute. Exiting the mansion without a single scratch on her, Catherine strolls gracefully through the sunlit courtyard, while Heroes follows closely behind, carrying the ornate wooden scroll tube they secured during the chaos. Turning back to her loyal butler, Catherine asks if he successfully retrieved the exact item she requested, to which Heroes calmly confirms that everything was recovered right where she specified. She played her uncle like a cheap fiddle. Confronting him was literally just a side quest to grab the real prize. Clasping the heavy wooden cylinder close to her chest, Catherine inwardly reflects that dealing with her greedy relative was merely a secondary objective today. What she was truly after was a hidden treasure buried inside the manor that held far greater strategic value for her long-term survival in this novel world. Inside that decorative case laid secret documents capable of supercharging the Revolutionary Army's military
military strength, while simultaneously exposing the ruling emperor's darkest, most shameful secret. When Heros curiously asks what this mysterious cylinder actually contains, Catherine offers a bright, beaming smile, revealing with a giggle that it's officially part of her late father's stolen inheritance. Flashback memories reveal the day of her father's funeral, where she personally saw Paddlemon sneaking off into the estate shadows with the scroll case tucked under his arm.
Bro is so obsessed with erasing his own unpaid loans that he accidentally dropped the ultimate political nuclear bomb. Talk about room temperature IQ. Back then, Paddleman was so hyper-fixated on finding and destroying his personal debt contracts that he carelessly overlooked the priceless letter tucked right beside them.
In the original novel storyline, Aetius's rebel forces burned the entire mansion to the ground without realizing this evidence existed. But thanks to her past knowledge, Catherine saved the document before flames could destroy it forever.
Cradling the scroll case against her chest with a warm, affectionate expression, she softly whispers to herself that this secret weapon will be her grand gift to help her beloved prince succeed.
Handing over the glowing glass vial containing the laced green tea, Catherine instructs Heros to immediately deliver the poison sample straight to the royal authorities to lock her uncle away for good.
Heros inspects the evidence closely, asking if he should submit the package directly to that specific government official she previously selected for their political network.
Look at that radiant smile! Her enemies are getting systematically destroyed while she looks like a literal angel. With a sparkling smile, Catherine confirms her suspicion, eager to watch her multi-layered political trap snap completely shut around her foes. Meanwhile, far across the region, heavy snowfall blankets a dense evergreen forest as bitter winter winds howl through the ice-covered pine trees. Nestled deep within the freezing landscape stands a massive snow-draped fortress estate, quiet and secluded under the pale winter sky. Heavy leather boots leave deep footprints in the fresh powder as a group of silent travelers marches toward the grand compound. Standing atop the snowy overlook, whispering, 3 figures wrapped tightly in dark traveling cloaks quietly survey the entire estate stretching out below them. Aetius, looking all brooding in the falling snow, is top-tier main character energy. He's right back where his nightmare started. Pulling back his heavy hood, Aetius gazes out with serious, intense eyes, muttering softly in disbelief that fate has dragged him back to these grounds once again. Bonus Chibi panel time! Catherine flexing her bossy demeanor on the scavengers is peak comedic gold. In an adorable bonus moment, Chibi Catherine crosses her arms demandingly, asking when she finally gets to meet their secretive guildmaster, leaving the poor masked agent sweating bullets.